Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1465 of the War News stream. And also, don't get too carried away. The war hasn't started yet, but it is true. Explosions are rocking Iranian missile bases, and also there are heavy fighter jet activity over Iraq right now, but it has not started as of yet. But we are seeing massive explosions. And also, we have very big news that Iran's preparing to declare a doomsday order on Israel, according to Israel, and U.S. embassies are evacuating across the Middle East as we speak, and it seems like we're approaching maybe 0 hour, but we really can't tell. But it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news from around the world as we have been able to hear of significant developments within the Middle East, the Indian subcontinent, Eastern Europe, East Asia, Western Europe, and the Americas as well over the past 24 hours. We have been able to see that at this moment right now, significant explosions have occurred at the Parchin missile production facility to the southeast of Tehran, as well as the city of Qom, just about 50 miles south of the city of Tehran. This happened simultaneously as a large amount of fighter aircraft were heard overhead by Iraqi civilians living near to the area of the Iranian border. This does not appear to be the opening of an armed conflict so far, and it appears that the Air Force activities within Iraq were not conducting any sorts of strikes on the Islamic Republic of Iran at this moment. But the timing is quite coincidental, to say the least, the fact that these aircraft were in the skies at the same time the explosions were occurring inside of Iran. Additionally, we have also been able to hear that according to the IAEA and the chief director of the IAEA, General, I believe his name is Rafael Grossi, he has stated that the Islamic Republic of Iran has near weapons-grade uranium currently enriched and ready to be used or further enriched to a nuclear weapons grade that has currently been stored at the Isfahan nuclear research campus, which we had noted on satellite photography had its entrances covered in multiple thousands of cubic feet of soil within the last few weeks. The Islamic Republic of Iran, according to Israeli intelligence, is preparing some sort of a doomsday option in which, if the Islamic Republic of Iran's government appears to be imminently destroyed by the United States or Israel in the upcoming attacks, they will be trying to fire all of their available weaponry directly at the state of Israel to attempt to destroy them before the Iranians are completely destroyed as well. Meanwhile, U.S. forces have been confirmed at the Al Udeid Air Base to have completely evacuated, while the USS Gerald R. Ford has now been confirmed to be in theater and in campaign, along with the USS Abraham Lincoln, which is currently over inside of the Arabian Sea. We have also been able to hear that the United States of America is going to be conducting further actions within the Middle East, leading up until the moment of, or 0 hours we would call it, when the strikes actually begin, as we have been able to hear that the Secretary of State will be arriving in Israel on Monday or Tuesday, but oddly enough, unlike every other instance in which the Secretary of State has traveled around the country or around the world, he will not be bringing a press pool with him, which is leading us to believe that this may be some sort of a feint, which means that this would be a deception, and he's actually not going to Israel, or this may be some sort of a more lower-key or secretive meeting that will be held between the Secretary of State and the Israeli government on further actions that will be taken on the Islamic Republic of Iran. Significant airlifts have been conducted over the course of the day as well. And we have seen that multiple embassies and governments, even including the People's Republic of China, have issued statements to their citizens in Iran and their embassies to make sure to leave immediately and as soon as possible. We've also heard a statement from the Secretary of State that the Islamic Republic of Iran is unlawfully detaining American citizens within their country, and this appears to be showing us that right now the Iranian government is already conducting reprisals and maybe trying to gather hostages in the form of American citizens that were inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran in the days prior. Just next door and to the east, the Pakistani armed forces have been conducting what can only be described as a slaughter on Taliban forces. The Taliban appears to be on the complete back foot as of today, with Pakistani armed forces not only laying waste to a large amount of Taliban military facilities across the border, but actually pushing across the border and taking significant ground directly across the border and inside of Afghanistan. The Pakistani army and the Pakistani Ministry of Defense and government have made it clear that they will not be stopping their military activities and actions against Afghanistan until they achieve their aims within the country, and have stated at a minimum that they are planning on creating a sanitary zone several miles deep across the entirety of the border of Afghanistan to stop further direct acts of aggression by Afghanistan directly inside of Pakistani territory, largely protecting the citizens of Pakistan from greater attacks that may be conducted by the Taliban, considering the instability of the armed forces of the Taliban and the country of Afghanistan at large. We've also seen that factions within Kabul of the Taliban are already fighting each other, as while there is a heavy firefight that they are losing right now, raging across the entirety of the border regions of Pakistan, it now appears that warring factions of the Taliban are actually shooting each other to death in Kabul in an attempt to try and take control of the government in the midst of the chaos. This also comes as other military facilities south within the Kandahar plains have suffered significant damage from Pakistani airstrikes over the past 24 hours. We've also seen outside of this news that the cartel war between the Jalisco cartel and the Mexican government is still continuing, with some some video evidence today actually being published by the Jalisco cartel itself within the state of Michoacan, which actually shows that they have been using FPV drones and other forms of drones similar to those used in the Ukraine war against the Mexican National Guard and the Mexican Army, showing that the cartel is apparently going to be emphasizing a heavy use of drone warfare against Mexican government forces, further complicating the situation and making it far messier and possibly even resulting in far higher casualties for the Mexican armed forces. We've also seen that the United States of America has announced that they will be testing a Minuteman III ICBM from the Vandenberg Space Force Base in California here within the next couple of days, with a splashdown area somewhere within the northern Pacific. Additionally, we've also been able to see that inside of Europe, the Swedish Ministry of Defense has been able to confirm that the drone that overflew the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle of the French Navy was a Russian drone fired by a Russian spy ship that was just nearby to the port of Malmo during the time of the incident. The British government has also stated that the evacuations of U.S. staff and embassies from the Middle East is a clear, glaring red sign that strikes against Iran are still going to be highly likely happening here soon. We have seen some interference, however, at least in that story, as it appears that an Omani advisor or some sort of an Omani diplomat has actually stated that there is now a Iranian agreement to conduct zero enrichment, although we don't know if that's true or not. The Ukrainian armed forces have also been able to conduct attacks in the Perm Oblast, the longest range attacks that we've seen so far conducted by Ukrainian missile forces in the entirety of the war, and it does also appear that the Russian Federation has suffered significant damage within the western part of their country. We've also seen that the Ukrainian armed forces have still inflicted higher losses onto the Russian armed forces today, and it appears that the Russians are still making no ground and are in fact losing ground to Ukrainian counterattacks that are ongoing at this moment. But before we get into all of this news, starting with our largest stories first and then moving our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night, we do have to make sure that we get to the breaking news that has come out just right now. And Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the hotspot of the world tonight. It is Iran. All eyes are on Iran tonight. We are seeing something which is very, very fascinating. Right now, logistics airframes are departing CENTCOM's area of responsibility at a very, very fast pace. As of right this second, we are seeing 9 and counting logistics airframes, cargo aircraft, leaving the area. And right now, their orders are to stay close to the ground and stay on the ground only as long as it's essential to the mission, and then get the hell out of the area. So that appears to be what they are doing right now. So I'm not sure if this indicates that attacks are imminent within the hour. I'm not really sure about that, but this is interesting that these cargo aircraft are fleeing the area of the Middle East very quickly, it appears like. So, Enforcer, what can you make of that?
We can actually see the conga line here on Flight Radar 24 of the multiple C-17 Globemasters, which are conga lining out of the Middle East right now. They appear to be flying over the Aegean Sea between Greece and Turkey and heading on up most likely towards German Air Force bases like Ramstein or Spangdahlem, where they will then land for a moment, refuel, and then probably conduct the long leg back to the United States of America after a stopover or a layover inside of Germany. This appears to be showing us, at least at the moment, that final preparatory work is being done by the United States Air Force to be able to clear out the space of non-essential aircraft that will not be involved in combat operations or combat support operations, so that way there is not a great deal of I guess you could say, overwhelming amounts of aircraft that would be in the airspace at the time that would be non-critical for the U.S. Air Forces and their operations against Iran, which may be indicating to us that strikes could happen this weekend. But I do want to make it incredibly clear that the United States Air Forces are generally working off of the time frame provided by the civil administration, and the civil administration is wildly unpredictable at the moment, meaning that strikes could happen several weeks from now, or they could start happening here within the next few days over this weekend. The Enforcer channel is on high alert as usual. We have been during the entirety of the developments over the beginning of this year, so we are going to be making sure to keep an eye out, so that way when the war begins, we will be able to immediately make sure to go live, notifying all of y'all once the United States of America begins its strikes on the Islamic Republic of Iran. But at the moment, this appears to be preparatory action for the airspace, so that way there is no non-essential aircraft within the region. Let's take a look at the civilian traffic within the area. And it does appear that the civilian traffic appears to be largely normal at the moment, so it seems from what we can see that there isn't going to be any strikes happening at least within the next hour, because the civilian airspaces over most of these countries would have to be cleared out, specifically over Jordan, Israel, Iraq, and Syria. And currently we are seeing a decent amount of domestic flights transiting through those areas, meaning that imminent strikes will not be happening within the next few hours. This may be preparatory work to prepare for strikes that will be happening on Saturday or Sunday night here within the next 24 to 36 hours, I would assume at this point. But moving on from that, and moving on into our major news, speaking of the Islamic Republic of Iran, it's actually time for us to get into the major news of the night, which moves us directly into the Iranian situation. We have been able to confirm that large explosions have happened over the Islamic Republic of Iran over the course of this day, specifically around the areas closest to Tehran. The city of Qom and also the Parchin missile production facility at Parchin, southeast of Tehran, have suffered major explosions and fires over the course of the day, which is fairly significant, at least in terms of the fire that happened at the Parchin missile facility. The Parchin missile facility not only serves as a missile production plant, which you can actually see right here, it also serves as a nuclear research campus as well. You can also see a large amount of berms and munitions that they have stored up out here in the desert as well. This military complex is an incredibly significant one, and we have been able to confirm that in the past, this very facility has produced a significant number of short-range and intermediate-range ballistic missiles that the Islamic Republic of Iran used against U.S. forces at the end of Operation Midnight Hammer, and also during the 12-day war against the state of Israel. Today, a thick black column of smoke began to rise from the area, which clearly indicates to us, and I cannot play the clip unfortunately, at least on this one folks, but I can show you all at least a still frame of it. This thick black smoke is actually coming from the mountain range that you can see about right here, meaning that this was highly likely filmed from Tehran, looking south and towards, or southeast and towards the area of Parchin. This thick smoke is indicating that this is not a munitions fire, meaning that the ammunition storage facility that we can see right here is not the main source of the explosion, as solid propellant igniting generally emits a very bright white or almost even a fluorescent white smoke. Thick black smoke usually indicates a fire made of normal combustible materials, possibly suggesting that a factory or an assembly hall is on fire at the moment, or some other form of a facility, either conducting nuclear research or missile development and missile production, is on fire at this moment and burning quite heavily. We were able to get some additional videos of the fires that did occur within this area right here. This was actually filmed from the major motorway, Motorway 44, seen here just south of Parchin, looking north and towards the complex. The fire was incredibly large, and it appeared that even by this time of day, when this video was made, either by the evening or the late night, the fire was still raging within the area of the Parchin Missile and Nuclear Research Complex, which we can see right here.
That's interesting that they would have a fire like that of that magnitude at one of the largest missile facilities inside of Iran. Because Parchin, I believe, is one of the largest ones that Iran has. So it's obviously going to be well guarded because that's one of their top sites. So the fact that something like this was able to happen indicates they're having a lack of security or they're getting nervous, one or the other.
It certainly does appear that that is the case. It may also be the case that this is some sort of sabotage that was conducted by operatives on the ground, or I guess you could say operators on the ground by the CIA or the Mossad, considering that this production facility is incredibly important in stockpiling Iranian missiles and also being able to allow the Iranians to conduct a sustained rate of fire. We already understand that at the moment, the Iranians have such a large stockpile of short-range and intermediate-range ballistic missiles, they do not need to produce missiles on demand to be able to keep their missile launchers or TELs operational, so this will not have a direct impact on the upcoming war and especially the opening days or weeks of that conflict on the Iranians' rate of fire. However, in the long-term strategic picture, most likely it would happen that missiles would have to be produced on demand, as the Iranians would eventually start to deplete their missile stocks as they would fire wave upon wave of missiles at the Israelis and the United States within the region. For this purpose, this missile facility would be incredibly important for sustainment operations of munitions and supplies that the Iranian rocket forces could use to continue attacks on U.S. and Israeli forces. The fact that this facility is on fire is giving us an idea that it may have been an attempt to knock it out before strikes actually begin, but once again, that heavily depends on what part of the facility exactly caught on fire and what that building was involved in. We can clearly tell by the location of the fire that it appeared to have happened somewhere around this larger facility seen about right here, and it also appears to be around this larger production hall that was around right here, or possibly within the military facility somewhere within this general area. Either way, it was not on the actual munition storage facility right over here to the west of the main, I guess you could say, campus of the facility, and so for that reason, we know that it is a building that is on fire, not munitions. We could also see that smoke billowing from that building here in this clip as well.
A lot of motorcycle filmers out here, motorcycle spies, or whatever you want to call them.
Motorcycle OSINT guys with cameras. They're very good at their job. But beyond that, moving on from those clips at Parchin and moving us on really quickly and over to the border near Iraq, we also were able to hear from many eyewitness sources on the ground inside of the border region near to the Iranian border that there was significant jet activity over the northern areas of Iraq in the semi-autonomous region of Kurdistan and also within the very eastern border regions of Iraq directly bordering the Islamic Republic of Iran. And we can actually hear those jets in this clip right here.
You can kind of see it a little bit too.
Yeah, you actually can right there. So it appears that whatever aircraft this was, it appears to be emitting some sort of a visible, I guess you could say, thermal trail or a thermal signature, which would suggest that it might have had its afterburner on and was attempting to gain a larger amount of speed at that moment. It clearly is subsonic, but it does have its afterburner on, suggesting that it's trying to accelerate rapidly. And we, unfortunately, at the moment, do not know whose aircraft these were. According to Iraqi eyewitnesses on the ground, I was about to say Israeli there were multiples of these aircraft up within the air, and there were several videos like this from throughout the entirety of the Republic of Iraq, but we do not know exactly whose aircraft these are. The Israelis and the United States of America use near identical airframes. The only airframe that would be individual or unique to the United States of America would be the F-15 Eagle. Outside of that, the Israelis also use the F-15, the F-16, and also the F-35 airframes, meaning that even if we did get a visual look at the actual silhouette of the aircraft, it would be very hard to identify whether it was an Israeli aircraft or an American aircraft. We can confirm, however, that those aircraft were up in the sky within eastern Iraq during that period of time, which appears to be suggesting that there may be some preparatory air actions happening within this area, either preparing to, say, conduct missile or attack drills on the Islamic Republic of Iran, or to go ahead and get aircraft within the area pre-staged. It's a little bit unclear at the moment as to what the exact intentions of these flights were over Iraq, but we would say that it would largely fall under the larger umbrella of preparatory actions being conducted by Israel and the United States to prepare for the attacks that will be conducted on the Islamic Republic of Iran. Right now, many people are talking about the major fire that did break out of the Parchin missile facility and nuclear research campus over the course of the day, and it appears that a lot of people are talking about what they believe the cause of the major fire was that broke out at the facility. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that right now, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so what is the cause? Now that we've seen that Iran's major ballistic missile factory at Parchin has exploded and caught fire, at least part of it has, what do you think led to this? So 72% said it's sabotage. There are currently probably agents on the ground attacking these facilities all over Iran, and 13% said it's probably just accidents. Iran's probably getting nervous, and they're making mistakes, and it's causing fires. And some, 8%, said it seems like another gas leak. And gas leak, by the way, is basically code words for we have agents in the country and they're attacking stuff. That's what that's code word for. We saw gas leaks all over. I think we saw them in Bushehr. We've seen them in many different cities, but they weren't always gas leaks. Like, that's something that the Iranians are saying, and it's not gas leaks. So I would say it seems to me like sabotage. We're seeing, of course, here at Parchin, we're seeing the major explosion. We're also seeing across several other cities today alone, we're seeing explosions happening all over. And these are not small. These are very large fires, and I don't think they're accidents. There's no way that they're suddenly having accidents all over their country at a rate like this. It would be quite wild. So I'm with a 71%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'll be with the 71%. This is highly likely a sabotage attack, and I have to say very clearly that this is absolutely not related to the military flights that we're seeing over eastern and northern Iraq earlier today that we just showed on film. This appears to be something that happened internally within Iran, and its origin point was from inside of the country, and it does appear that this is sabotage. We did not hear any Iranian media claims that the facility had been directly attacked by some sort of a kinetic weapon, which would be a bomb or a missile, and also due to the fact that the Iranian government has not really made any public claims about the major fire that's broken out of this facility, would lead us to believe that it was sabotage, considering that the Iranians rarely ever mention acts of sabotage that happen on their territory. And additionally, we would also know that, at least for the Islamic Republic of Iran's sake, that there is a very, very unlikely chance that there was any sort of, say, an accident, considering that this facility has had a very low incidence rate over about the past several months since the end of the 12-day war. So with that in mind, I would have to say that this clearly falls within the 71% of the people who voted for it being sabotage. I would also say that it shows clear signs of some sort of sabotage that was conducted on the ground. Moving us on, though, and out of the Islamic Republic of Iran's capital, or generally the outskirts of its capital, we're going to be moving about 40 miles south of the city and towards the major city of Qom. Qom has also suffered another major and significant fire over the course of the day as well, with a picture coming out here showing the thick black smoke billowing from some sort of a facility within the central area of the city, although we cannot exactly tell what it is at the moment. It appears that it's highly likely some sort of a military-related facility, but we really don't know, to be entirely honest with y'all, what exactly caused this fire and what the fire is using as its fuel. We know that the fire did break out in Qom, and it is a very large one, as we can see right here. It appears that the base of the fire is probably several hundred feet wide, and that plume of smoke appears to be quite thick and quite voluminous, meaning that whatever is burning quite heavily. Still, we don't know exactly what this one was. We do have to point out, however, that the Qom city area is an incredibly important one for the Islamic Republic of Iran and its nuclear research and weapons capabilities, as we did see that during the 12-day war, the Israeli Air Force did strike the Qom city area a decent amount of times, and it also appeared that there was an ammunition storage facility nearby within the mountains, which I believe is out here. So, it's actually right here. Here it is. This is actually a munitions storage facility of the Islamic Republic of Iran's that was hit during the 12-day war. You can actually see some storage berms that have been created throughout the area. This is actually a fairly large ammunition storage facility. And then right up into the northeast of the area of the city of Qom, we also are able to see that the Qom uranium enrichment plant is still here, and we are not entirely sure if it is operational or not at the moment, but it does pose a significant strategic target to make sure to double tap here within future strikes, as it would be clearly evident that if the Islamic Republic of Iran is still attempting to develop a nuclear weapon, then ensuring the destruction of uranium centrifuges that are able to enrich nuclear or radioactive materials to a weapons grade would be of high priority to the United States and the State of Israel in future strategic endeavors against the nation. But with that in mind, we were able to see that larger fire that did break out in Qom, and it does appear to be one that was wildly interesting, to say at a minimum. While all of that's been going on, there was something that was said that was incredibly interesting and of significant concern and importance that we were able to hear about on the channel over the course of the day from the IAEA, or the International Atomic Energy Agency. The IAEA is a UN body that has been created for the oversight of nuclear technology, nuclear research, and also nuclear weaponry. It's generally covering anything that involves nuclear energy being used for any purpose, whether it be for destruction or the creation of electricity and other forms of products that can be produced by nuclear technology. The IAEA's chief director, Rafael Grossi, has stated today that Iran appears to be hiding highly enriched uranium within the Isfahan nuclear research campus. Apparently, according to the IAEA director, it is believed that this uranium is enriched to about a 60% grade, which is getting incredibly close to a weapons-grade uranium. It is believed that there are several hundred kilograms of this that has currently been stored within the Isfahan nuclear research campus just southeast of the city of Isfahan, and I'll actually go and show you all that really quickly. It is right here. This is the Isfahan Nuclear Research Campus, and nearby in the surrounding area are actually some tunnel entrances. You can see them right here and right here that apparently lead to an underground facility that is connected to the Nuclear Technology Center, which you can see right here on camera. As a matter of fact, the refreshed or renewed satellite photography that Google has provided actually shows the leftover damage that was conducted by the US's strikes on this facility using Tomahawk cruise missiles that were fired at this facility. I have to make it incredibly clear for everyone that the Isfahan Research Campus was not hit by GBU-57 MOPS. It was actually hit by Tomahawk cruise missiles, and only softer structures in the actual research campus above ground were hit. It appears that the tunnel complexes over here to the north and west of the campus were largely untouched and undamaged. It's also very interesting to note that with this statement by the IAEA director, this is connecting some loose ends that we had for coverage here on this channel. Many of y'all will remember that we actually saw satellite photography of those very same tunnel entrances being covered in hundreds of feet of soil, or actually thousands of cubic feet of soil just a couple of weeks ago. This satellite photography here was taken about 2 weeks ago on the 10th of February of 2026 and was closing up the tunnel entrance that we were easily able to see on Google Maps just prior. You can see the tunnel entrance right here as well, and the supporting building next door. There's that supporting building next door, the tunnel entrance, and now the thousands of cubic feet of soil that's covering the entrance. We stated back then that this was a wildly suspicious sort of a development here because it seemed to be suggesting that the Iranians were trying to stop people from getting in. And I have to make this incredibly clear here. This isn't to protect from a mop. Mops penetrate the soil vertically. They don't go in horizontally. A mop doesn't land on the road right here and then stop and go, grow some legs, and then walk up to the tunnel entrance and go, oh yes, kaboom, and then blow straight through the door. They don't do that. They go through the soil, meaning the view that we're looking at right here is the view in which a mop is going to start slamming through the soil to get into a facility, meaning that it would explode downwards and onto a tunnel complex, not through the front door. This means that filling up this entrance with soil isn't stopping a mop. The intent behind filling up this entrance with soil, which we pointed out weeks earlier, was to make sure that nobody could get into the facility on foot. if we drop off a special forces team, for example, near to this facility, the special forces teams, as well trained and as well equipped and as well prepared as they are, and as well supported as they are not going to be able to whip out some trench digging shovels and dig all of this dirt out of the way of the tunnel facilities that are underneath this mountain. That would be physically impossible. We would have to literally drop off a backhoe or maybe even some larger amounts of excavation equipment with the special forces, along with a couple of contractors that we got from some construction company here in America, to clear this out to be able to get into that tunnel facility. And we stated that that was clearly suspicious. And it is, obviously, because this is suggesting that there was something in the facility that they were not wanting anyone to be able to get into and see. If there was nothing in this facility that was sensitive, they wouldn't have done this. And now we know, according to the IAEA's director, that it appears that all credible information that they have suggests that basically all of the highly enriched uranium that they have left in the country is actually inside of this tunnel facility and has now effectively been buried to where neither a U.S. airstrike can really reach it, because the MOPS don't really appear to be that effective because these tunnels are so deep. And also, we can't get special forces in there now because they covered the entrances with soil. So it does appear that a lot of people are a little bit interested in this because, according to prior claims, and I do have to point this out, the President of the United States claimed just a few days after Midnight Hammer and multiple weeks afterwards that all of Iran's nuclear facilities were completely destroyed, including this one. One thing that's interesting, though, and I have to point this out, and I have to point this out with a great deal of importance here, is that we hit the buildings above ground. We also did that at Natanz, and I have to go up here just north of Isfahan to Natanz and show you all that. We hit this facility right here. There's a little concrete cap now about where this little yellow dot is on the map that covers up the bomb hole that was created in the central area of the Natanz facility. But the U.S. did not directly bomb the Pickaxe Mountain complex directly south of the Natanz nuclear facility that was visible by satellite, nor did we bomb the tunnels or tunnel networks that were connected to the Isfahan Nuclear Research Technology Center that we can see right here. So it appears that from what we can tell, at least from right now, the U.S.'s Operation Midnight Hammer was, of course, as always, an impressive spectacle, but didn't really achieve much, and actually causing major or irreparable damage to Iran's nuclear weaponry program. And at the moment, a lot of people are talking about that right now. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so let's give you some more details about the situation, by the way, to give you a bit of the, I guess you could say, a quick history of how this whole thing went last year during the last strikes that we saw with the B-2 bombers by U.S. forces on these Iranian nuclear sites. We saw the main target during those attacks that the U.S. conducted on Iran was the Fordow nuclear site. They dropped 14 GBU-57 bunker busters, massive 30,000-pound bombs on Fordow specifically. But on Isfahan and Natanz, the other nuclear sites, specifically Isfahan, the one we're looking at right here on the map, they launched about 30 Tomahawk missiles and split them up, about 15 to Natanz and 15 to Isfahan. Those are obviously not bunker busters. They were not intended to bust through concrete or a whole bunch of compacted soil. So that was a major problem. So we did see Isfahan generally escaped too much destruction for the most part. It generally survived, according to what we know about the Tomahawks hitting that site. So that is something to note. Also, by the way, we had heard reports shortly afterward. This was coming from a mainstream outlet, by the way, on June 22nd of 2025. Shortly after the strikes, a mainstream media outlet, the New York Times, reported that it has growing evidence that the Iranians, before U.S. attacks, had removed 400 kilograms, or roughly 880 pounds of uranium enriched to 60% purity. That might sound familiar to you, by the way. The uranium that the IAEA is currently talking that Iran has, that's to 60% purity. It sounds like the New York Times reports were accurate, and they were able to get the 880 pounds of uranium that was highly enriched out of the site before the U.S. struck. So that kind of clears the mystery up. We now have an answer to the mystery. Iran was able to salvage all of that enriched uranium, which means they are still just 2 weeks away from a nuclear breakout if they choose to enrich it to 90%. That's very dangerous, and that is why the U.S. is now saying that the nuclear threat is raising its head again, because the threat never disappeared. Now, that's why they're saying that. So the question right now is, what are your thoughts about the nuclear site? Do you think Isfahan was destroyed, or was it not? 35% said it was damaged, but not really that much damaged. 34% said the nuke sites 100% survived the strikes, and 20% said the nuke sites are heavily damaged. So obviously, I believe they got damaged. The Tomahawks probably did cause, I guess, cosmetic damage to Isfahan, but I do not believe that it destroyed that facility. I think the proof is in the pudding here. They're using it right now to store all their enriched uranium. So apparently, it survived well enough to serve as a storage site for their very valuable uranium that they're currently stowing away, the almost 1,000 pounds of it that we're seeing right now. So I'm with the 35%. It got damaged, but it wasn't damaged enough to take it out. That's for damn sure. That's become very clear at this point. So we kind of got exaggerated to a little bit. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that, much like many military operations that have been conducted with the idea of expedience being the primary function or focus of the operation, they are wildly fantastic spectacles, but they achieve basically nothing in terms of our long-term goals or initiatives in foreign policy. I would say that that extends to the situation with Maduro in Venezuela and also the situation with Midnight Hammer in the Islamic Republic of Iran. The military operation, as far as the effectiveness of the armed forces, their ultimate training and preparedness to be able to conduct the operation, was of course sublime as usual. However, the overall planning of the operation and the intelligence that was given leading up to the operation was woefully poor-sighted, or I guess you could say completely lacking in any terms of competence. This facility clearly is operational, and the fact that we did not hit the tunnels just to the north of the facility or even try and cause any damage to them is clearly showing us that at the moment this operation didn't really achieve much of anything, rather than blowing away a couple of soft structures within the nuclear research campus and then leaving the actual tunnels, where most of the sensitive components and equipment of the facility would be, intact. We also saw that that happened additionally within the area of Pickaxe Mountain. Now, at the moment, this means that the Iranians are still in possession of all of the fissile material that we claimed that they had when we bombed them during Midnight Hammer, that we then claimed afterwards had been completely destroyed. So with this in mind, here's what we would have to do now. Like, if I'm just speaking entirely honest right now, here's what we would actually have to do to see some modicum of success in what is to come. Clearly, because the Iranians have had a lot of time to fortify this facility and cover the entrance and soil, we are going to have to conduct some sort of a ground operation at a minimum if we were to be able to see any success within the country. The problem is, however, is that conducting a complete occupation of the Islamic Republic of Iran seems to be something that the current administration doesn't really want to do, and some people are generally against, no matter how much that could be beneficial to the United States in the long run. So, here's how you'd have to do it. Well, you'd have to open up with the significant air operations that we already know are going to happen, force suppression of enemy air defense, the destruction of the Islamic Republic of Iran's navy, and the destruction of military forces, in particular ground forces, of the Islamic Republic of Iran's army and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, including the transport erector launchers that would be firing at U.S. forces along with the drone launchers, and also, specifically, some of the Iranians' actual ground forces within key locations, specifically around the southern areas of Tehran, around the city of Qom, and also around Isfahan. Once that is conducted, I think the smartest idea at this point, which this would be an absolutely insane operation, will require a great deal of, I guess you could say, competency, foresight, planning, and a large amount of high-tempo air operations to see that this would succeed. But you would basically just have to go and airdrop guys into places like Isfahan at the international airport, and then just have them drive from the airport scene here south to the facility with a whole bunch of special engineering equipment being covered by U.S. air power in the meantime to take off a lot of the pressure and also bring in some limited combat forces to create a perimeter around the airport in the southeastern area and literally just dig open the entrances to the tunnels, get in there, and then obliterate it. In the meantime, U.S. airstrikes would be going on throughout the rest of the country, largely throwing the Iranian armed forces off kilter, and also additionally making sure to put enough pressure on the Iranian government that they may see that they collapse in the meantime during that sort of a process. You would also have to wash, rinse, and repeat this basically everywhere else where there's a nuclear facility in Iran, because otherwise you wouldn't see any modicum of success in wiping out their nuclear program again. And here's why. GBU-57 MOPS can't hit these tunnels, so it has to be an on-the-ground solution to knock these out. Otherwise, it's just not going to work.
Also, by the way, really take a look at a second at the risk here, because it's not being exaggerated. We've been told for a long time that it's a 2-week time period for Iran to have a nuclear breakout, meaning they can take the uranium from 60% enrichment all the way up to 90%, which is needed for nuclear weapons usage. They have to bring up to 90%, and that takes about 2 weeks. If you believe the reports, and Iran truly has just shy of 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium that they could have a breakthrough in just 2 weeks, that's enough material for 5 fission precision warheads. That's very serious. They could have been stalling right now, like we see currently with these negotiations. They could be working on that as we speak. We don't know if that's the case or not. We don't know what they're doing because they've been stalling for some reason. We've been speculating that maybe they're waiting for more Chinese air defense, maybe they're waiting for Russian equipment possibly, but they could be in these bunkers doing the enrichment that we're talking about. We simply don't know, and the U.S. is not being transparent about it, whether or not they're actually pulling that off or not. So that's a disturbing spot to be in, by the way, and it's apparently what the case is, because that's the reports that we keep hearing about.
And it certainly does appear that those are the reports. And I see some people coming up with different ideas as to how to get into the facility. Some people are like, well, what can we just cover the area in water and then start pumping the mud away? Well, for one, a lot of these facilities are built in hard rock. Like, they're not built in mud. So that would be next to impossible beyond a couple of inches of topsoil. And even still, transporting water into the area, considering that water is a scarcity within the Islamic Republic of Iran at the moment, would be incredibly heavy, meaning that logistically that would be a fairly slow and very tiresome process. The smartest way to do this, no joke, is to just go ahead and have a C-17 drop off a couple of backhoes and a couple of other excavation items within the area of the Isfahan airport and just drive them down the highway down there with a perimeter created in the meantime to make sure that it's safe, and then bring them right up to the area of that facility, dig out the entrance, mine the entrance with explosives, blow it open, and then go in there and either secure the uranium and then have it airlifted out, or just find a way to attempt to destroy it, which would generally just be scattering it over a wider area with an explosion, which doesn't really destroy it, and it creates a minor radiological incident at that point, but that would also be another way to ensure that the Iranians would generally lose most, if not all, of their fissile material. It'd be smarter at that point, though, considering that we would have already created an airhead, to just load the stuff up in transport trucks and then go drive that to a C-17 waiting at the runway, load it up, and then fly it on out. But these sorts of operations that I'm talking about right here, folks, are not easy. I'm making that sound like it's a cakewalk. This would be insanely difficult. For one, this entire operation would have to be conducted near to one of the largest urban areas inside of Iran, meaning that there is a significant amount of Iranian armed forces that are based in the city. Secondly, we would have to see that there is a continuous air operation going on as a sideshow to the main show to be able to cover all of the U.S. forces that would be on the ground during that time. We would also have to make sure that during that entire process, suppression of enemy air defense operations are going on a continuous basis, literally a 24/7 schedule until this operation is completed, and multiple times over in different parts of the country. This would be such a complicated operation to conduct that it would be pretty difficult to see pulled off successfully. So we might see that instead of doing that, because this is a really difficult sort of a premise that we're working with right here, and it probably wouldn't go too well if I'm being completely frank, because it's just that outlandish. The smartest idea, at least at this point, is to literally just bomb the Iranian government into non-existence. That would probably be the best thing to do. So what we'll probably see U.S. air operations revolving around is decapitation attacks on top officials, because otherwise these other sorts of operations I'm talking about would have a very limited chance at success. It's doable, but do we want to risk a whole bunch of U.S. service members on the ground possibly getting killed because something goes wrong somewhere else and they don't have the air cover they need, and then their airhead starts getting overrun, and then they have no way to evac, and then we have to go down there and try and clear out the airfield again, or the Iranians could somehow crater the airstrip, and then it's impossible to land an aircraft at it, and then we got a whole bunch of guys stuck in the middle of Iran. That would end up becoming a disaster, and there's a whole bunch of external variables there that would end up making that pretty bad. So it'd probably just be better to go for decapitation strikes. It's a lot simpler, it's a lot easier, and we generally know where all of the top Iranian officials are. At least we would assume the CIA knows that, and they would be able to provide that information to the military for them to be able to go forward and conduct their strikes on those officials and largely topple the Iranian government, which in course would end the nuclear programs at large. So with that, I hope that does address the nuclear situation the best I can, at least within Isfahan, and also moving us on into some other more important developments, at least for the U.S.'s force disposition within the area. We were able to confirm that there was a live fire drill that was conducted today on the USS Frank E. Peterson, which is in the area of the Arabian Sea currently, and we could see it using some of its autocannon turrets on ship in a live fire exercise against some floating targets.
Yeah, the motto of the day is don't underestimate a guy just because his name is Frank, okay? Like, Frank might be as common of a name as John, but don't underestimate him. You never can tell what they got up their sleeves. As you can tell here, they have tracers and they have machine guns up their sleeve. They have the equipment behind it.
This is the Frank E. Peterson. Look at it. It's beautiful.
Look at Frank.
Frank is...
I'm going to be frank with you.
Frank, I had to be frank with Frank. Frank is a very good looking ship right here. This is a fine looking ship. And you know why, folks? It's one of the newest Arleigh Burkes that we have. This Arleigh Burke was actually commissioned in 2018. So this is a very new one by naval standards. This ship is only 8 years old. But it is a very nice ship. It's actually one of the most advanced Arleigh Burkes that we have. I believe it's a block or flight 3 variant of the Arleigh Burke class, which is basically the most up-armored and most well-equipped version of the Arleigh Burke that we have in service. We believe that it's currently a part of the larger strike group with the Abraham Lincoln, or it may be detached, conducting individual actions outside of a carrier strike group, but it is in the Arabian Sea at the moment, in close proximity to the USS Abraham Lincoln. You can actually see right here that it was christened in 2018, commissioned in 2022. So actually, in reality, this ship has only been in service for 4 years. This thing is basically a newborn by naval standards. 4-year ship is literally brand new. Most of the ships we have in the Navy right now are somewhere around 30 years old, and the aircraft carriers, specifically the Nimitz class, a lot of them are getting on up towards their late 40s and 50s. So, funnily enough, statistically, some of y'all have been alive in less time the Nimitz class carriers have been in service for the U.S. Navy. But still, a very interesting thing to see and note that we do have one of our newest Burkes currently in the Arabian Sea. Moving on from that, we've also seen that at Al Udeid in Qatar, the Al Udeid Air Base, it appears that according to Chinese satellite photography, we were able to confirm that basically every single combat aircraft and non-essential aircraft has been removed out of the Al Udeid Air Base. We can see a large amount of transports, specifically of the V-22 Osprey and C-130 variants of either fixed wing or tilt rotor aircraft, which is showing us that apparently there is a decent amount of transports, possibly for remaining personnel that may need to be evacuated at the last minute. But outside of that, all combat aircraft and all aerial tankers that were based at Al Udeid have been evacuated, meaning that our prior reports that we had heard that Al Udeid and the Bahrain Naval Station were being evacuated were actually correct, which is much to the dismay of some people who were apparently expert analysts to the mainstream news who were claiming that all of those statements were flat out lies, and that wasn't happening. It clearly did happen, and it happened at the time we said it did. Moving on from Al Udeid in Qatar, however, and over to the Eastern Mediterranean, we've also been able to confirm the Gerald R. Ford, seen that's that little blip right there conducting this hard turn to starboard right here, is actually within theater at this moment. It's about 200 kilometers east of Crete, which kind of lands it around this area right here on the map. Let me see if I can put actually I can't put a pin on it, so I'll go to this map. It's right there. It's right there. There's the marker for it. It's about 200 kilometers east of Crete as farthest point to the east, and that means that it's about right here. This means that the Gerald R. Ford and its escorts are in theater, meaning that about an additional 300 interceptors have been added into the air defense equation within this western area of the Middle East. And not only that, it also confirms that we have about an additional 80 or so aircraft within theater as well, support combat aircraft and the like all together. So a fairly significant deployment to see, and it has gotten there just in time, folks, for this weekend. And that's an interesting point here. It's an interesting point. It's the weekend, folks. The stock market, as of right now, has closed. Now, that's an interesting point. Actually, it's not as of right now. It was a couple of hours ago that it closed. But still, the point stands. It has closed. And it's going to be closed for the entirety of the weekend. Now, we all know, folks, that no matter what heinous crimes anyone has conducted in the United States of America, the Dow is up 50,000 points. And we also know that that's a very significant talking point right now, is that, yes, everything else might not be managed too well, but the Dow is up 50,000 points, so stop your moaning. So it does appear that there may be a chance, a minor one, and we'll have to get into that in a minute, that strikes might happen this weekend. But I'd have to say, folks, right now, we can't really tell exactly. But we do have breaking news coming out at this moment. And Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so we have more breaking news about the airspace over the Middle East. I've actually gotten an image here, thanks to Ocean Defender. He posted this for us, actually for everybody, but we're taking a look at it here. Apparently, this is the message that was sent out, apparently with, let me check this real quick. This was sent out with the TACC, the Tanker Airlift Control Center. They are telling the aircraft, one of these cargo aircraft, apparently a C-17, they're saying, please minimize ground time. I cannot pass any more info at this time. Being very cryptic, by the way, and giving us something for us Twitter randos to chew on with that right there. So that is interesting. Also, in addition to that, by the way, we've also heard a very interesting incident as well. We just heard that a C-5 Galaxy, one of the largest cargo aircraft in the U.S. fleet, was just forced to divert to a airbase right now because of crew fatigue, and that was the official reason for it. They said air diverting for crew fatigue. That's one of the first times I've ever seen that, by the way. Apparently, they've been flying for over 20 hours straight, according to the records. So they were so tired, apparently, I would assume maybe falling asleep or getting close to it, that they had to literally call it in to say, we have to land now. We are fatigued as hell. We can't keep doing this. So they're taking a landing right now. I've never seen that before.
That's interesting. I actually haven't heard of that before either, but making sure to read out the statement that was issued by the Tanker Airlift Control Center, the TACC, based out of, Scott Air Force Base in Illinois. It appears to have stated that, please minimize ground time. I cannot pass any more info at this time. So it appears that at the moment, we are seeing that they are trying to get the turnaround done as fast as possible for a lot of the airlift aircraft that are currently within the area. Specifically, this is most likely directed at the C-17s and the C-5 Galaxies that are currently there at the moment. Although this is the Tanker Airlift Control Center, it appears that that wouldn't really make a great deal of sense. And we can also see that this was issued to the type C-17, which I'm assuming are the C-17 Globemasters, which are currently within the area. That would seem to exactly line up at the moment. So right now we have heard that from the Tanker Airlift Control Center, they are stating that C-17s have to step up the tempo and get moving. Basically get their asses out of there. And it appears that there is a lot of them that are getting out of there. We can see this one that took off from Al Hadid heading back. We can also see this one that took off apparently from Kuwait City in Kuwait flying out. We can also see this one as well that appears to have landed actually at the Avda Air Base in southern Israel, possibly dropping off additional support, equipment, spare parts, and personnel for the F-22 Air Wing that's currently based at Avda. We can also see another C-17 that appears to have turned on its transponder within Turkey after flying through Iraq from an undisclosed location. We can also see a large flight, a literal conga line of C-17s, one that went to the Chania airfield within Crete, most likely to drop off additional supporting equipment to the air wings there. We've also seen another aircraft that turned on its transponder over the eastern Mediterranean, another aircraft that turned on its transponder leaving Muafak Air Base, and we can also see this aircraft as well turning on its transponder over eastern Mediterranean, this one leaving Muafak, and this one also leaving Muafak as well. A quite significant number of them actually have come from the Muafak Air Base, which we do understand has a significant basing of combat aircraft currently there. So at the moment, we would believe, based off of all of this information, they're trying to get all of the support aircraft out of the area, like we were saying earlier, because if something happens, like say, we start bombing Iran and they start shooting back or something along those lines, we generally want the airspace to be about as cleared out as it can be, because that's going to make the air traffic control situation and also defense situation a lot easier. And that also cuts down on the chances of friendly fire or blue on blue friendly fire incidents that could happen within the airspace over the Middle East during that period of time. This also leads us on into a greater question, with Israel stating something that is a little bit interesting. Moving us on from our breaking news and into Tehran, we were able to hear that the Israelis have stated that apparently the Iranians are working on some sort of a doomsday order. According to what we have heard, the defense establishment is examining the possibility that Tehran is preparing to activate the entire axis of evil against Israel, but understands that in the current situation it is not an existential threat. And still in the Knesset, people are wondering what are the security issues for which Netanyahu is willing to pay the price of the conscription law, and also why did Bennett get involved in the statements about a partnership with Smotrich, Ben-Gur, and in Efred. Apparently, we believe that the Iranians are preparing for some sort of a larger operation against the Israelis, at least according to their own claims, to where if it appears that the destruction of the Iranian government is imminent, they'll apparently give some sort of a scorched earth order to see that all available munitions are fired at the Israelis in basically a last dying gasp of breath, to see that they might be able to conduct as much damage as possible on Israel before the Iranian government and military apparatus is generally knocked out of action. It's a fairly interesting statement, to say the least, and well, I do have to say that the Israelis are not really that foreign to making these kinds of claims. Anytime that anything happens in the Middle East, someone's about to wipe out the whole of Israel, according to Israel. So, it's not anything that's, wildly new, but it does sound a little bit interesting. I'd have to say, though, that, I don't really think that's going to be what I don't I think that this whole thing, honestly, folks, is kind of a bit of bogus because why the hell would the Iranians hold back at all once this starts? I mean, the Iranians are going to know that this is a fight for their lives because they're not going to be able to go up against the combined air power of Israel and the United States in one fell swoop. So why the hell would they hold back the whole time and then at the last minute go, okay, everyone fire everything? Why would they do that? They're going to tell everyone to do that from the very onset. That's what they did during the 12-day war. If anything, we saw that their rate of fire was actually decreasing day over day through the 12-day war from day 1 to day 12. At day 12, they were only firing off about 30% of the missiles and drones that they were firing off on the first day. So why in the world would they hold back this time until they're pretty much completely destroyed and have no other chance to continue to fire, and then tell everyone who's left alive, okay, let's try and fire everything off now? I find this to be kind of like a hype talk claim, to be entirely honest with y'all, but people are still talking about this nonetheless and weighing in their opinions. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so this alleged doomsday order that Israel keeps warning about, that Iran's preparing to issue in case they are attacked, this is actually a little bit more serious than it actually sounds, because we do know, as many people have pointed out in the chat, that Iran only has a limited amount of launchers left for their missiles, because a lot of them were destroyed during the 12-day war. But that's not the only threat, though. We have to also contend with a major drone threat. They still have all their drone launchers for the most part, and also those have probably been replenished because they're not hard to make. So I'd imagine they have a full drone capability at their hands. Also, they do have the replenishing of missiles despite the lack of launchers. We also see that they still have the hands on the proxy forces. The proxy forces are still a threat. We have seen over the last couple of weeks that Israel has been conducting airstrikes into Lebanon to deal with Hezbollah, but we don't know if that's enough to actually stifle that group completely, because during the 12-day war, we saw that those groups were using, for example, Lebanon and other territories to launch drones at Israel from several different vectors, which proved to be quite detrimental for Israel's air defense. So I would say, with a combination of all those threats all together, it does pose a real threat. And I'm actually with the 32% that said it seems difficult but manageable. The reason why it's manageable is because the U.S. currently has a ton of air power in Israel right this second. If it wasn't for that, Israel might be in some big trouble, because their air defense system is more of a legacy system, and it's really not designed to shoot down cheap drones, as we saw during the 12-day war. So because we see all that air power, the F-22s, and all the American fighter jets, I would say they can handle it, but it's still going to be a challenge even at that. So, it's going to happen. We'll have to see. Hopefully it goes well. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm going to be honest with y'all. This is probably going to be defended somewhat easily this time around. It's going to be a little bit different than the last time, and I'll say why. The Israelis aren't on their own as far as defense of their airspace is concerned. They do have the coalition's air power to count on, and this is also going to be very different than the 12-day war, because during the 12-day war, on day 1, when the Iranians conducted their first missile attack, which we saw that many of them did make it through the Israeli air defense perimeter, the Israelis were fighting that conflict entirely on their own, meaning that the only available aircraft and air defense forces were Israeli. Right now, we understand that around, I believe it's something like 300 combat aircraft of the United States Air Force, so basically an entire second Israeli Air Force, is currently within the Middle East in terms of size and combat capability. And not only that, well, I actually have to count that those are just the Air Force aircraft on land. Then there's about an additional 100 naval aircraft, multi-role aircraft that are on the carriers as well, on the Lincoln and the Ford in the Mediterranean and the Arabian Sea. So in total, the United States probably has roughly around 400 combat aircraft and then multiple hundred supporting aircraft that are currently within the area right now, increasing loitering time and also ensuring that the United States has a fairly large amount of aircraft in the air to be able to conduct air defense interdictions like interceptions of missiles and drones, and then to be able to conduct defensive attacks on the Islamic Republic of Iran as well. Not only that, the Israelis are adding on about their additional 300 combat aircraft, which means that at any moment in time, probably around 200 to 300 combat aircraft could be up in the air at any given moment, because not all of them can go up in the air at the exact same time. So with all of that factored in, this isn't a situation where the Israelis just have the Iron Dome, David Sling, and the Arrow 2, and in the near future, the Arrow 3. This time they're going to have the THAAD systems, the Patriots, the U.S. Navy's air wings, all of the U.S. Air Force's air wings, the Israeli Air Force, and also the air defense of Jordan, and possibly maybe even Saudi Arabia, all mixed into the soup of an air defense force that we're going to see present from hour 1 this time, from basically 0 hour. And if that is the case...
Also, don't forget as well that this time we are going to be using Iran's own tactic against Iran this time. Iran loves to use these cheap shothead drone swarms. They love to fire those at everybody. They fire them at Israel. They fire them at anybody's an enemy, pretty much. And also they gave them to Russia to use against Ukraine as well. We hear, and we've been told through reports, that this time the U.S. has in place drone swarms ready to attack Iran. So this will be the first time that the West has ever combated the drone threat with a counter drone threat. It's literally, I think it's the Lucas. I think that's the drone. It's the U.S. variant of the Shahed. It's our version of a Shahed drone. And the military claims that they have them ready to fire at Iran. They'll be used in this conflict. So that could prove to be a big issue for Iran because they have really no way to defend their drone launchers. The only defense they have is mobility. They can try to move those around to evade detection, but if they're detected, they're sitting ducks, basically. They're going to get hit. And if you send in a bunch of Lucas drones, it could end up taking out a ton of those in the first volley, which would be using Iran's own tactic against themselves and probably putting the hurt on them quite a bit. So I wonder how that's going to go this time with that drone warfare.
And I've seen some people saying out there, and I've seen some people talking about it tonight, that some specific people out there have analyzed that the United States does not have enough interceptors for the upcoming conflict. And I have not really looked at the specific analysis that was provided by that person, just to make that clear. But one thing I would have to say is that from our analysis end, there is more than enough air defense currently within the area. The Patriot batteries are quite significant in size on their own. And if they're PAC-3 MSEs, which we would assume that they are, PAC-3 MSEs have dozens of air defense missiles available to fire at any given moment on demand, not even having to reload, meaning that if we have, say, for example, let me think here. If we had, say, 12 of those within the area, we have about 1,000 interceptors in the Patriots ready to fire about right now, probably, or somewhere close to that number, maybe even 700 if we're going with a more conservative figure. Then each carrier strike group has, at a minimum, about 300 SM-3s that they can use for air defense. So then that means that there are 600 air defense missiles in the Navy, 700 for the Army, and then that's completely forgetting, and I think this is something that everyone keeps forgetting in their equation if we're just talking about the U.S. forces within the area, is that aircraft can also engage and shoot down incoming missiles, and that's not a one-to-one equation where only one aircraft can shoot down one missile, and once it does that, it's over. I'm about to show you something that's really interesting here. This is the F-18 and what a lot of people call the missile bus loadout, which is basically where it carries as many air-to-air missiles as it can. An F-18, an F-16, and any other aircraft within the U.S. Air Force that can fire an air-to-air missile can and has been proven in prior conflicts to be able to shoot down drones and missiles with relative ease. The Ukrainians use their F-16s primarily to shoot down incoming Russian ballistic missiles and also incoming Russian drones. This F-18 Hornet right here has the capability of shooting down a whopping 12 air targets with its air-to-air missiles before it runs out of ammunition. On the singular F-18 Super Hornet is 8 AIM-120 AMRAAMs and 2 AIM-9Xs. That is enough firepower to take down 12 Iranian missiles with this one F-18. So if you had all, say, let's just go with something that's very simplified here. Let's say that we have all 100 FA-18 Super Hornets, including the Prowlers, which are now just normal Super Hornets, in the air at one given time in a missile bus loadout for each of them. That means that these FA-18s alone would be able to shoot down around 1,200 air targets in a perfect world with no external circumstances that would lower that number just with the F-18s in the air alone. So when you put that into perspective that the U.S. Air Force can generally do the same thing with an F-15C or an F-15E or F-16s or the F-35 and the F-22s, I mean, the air defense situation is well within our favor. Not only that, you have to include the ground air defense batteries as well, and then that's not even including the Israeli Air Force, which can generally do the same thing because they have the exact same airframes. They don't have the F-18, but they have the F-15, the F-16s, and the F-35s, and they also have their own ground air defense forces as well. So, I mean, if you're really looking at that in reality, you'd be pretty hard-pressed to ever say that at any given moment the U.S. wouldn't have enough air defense interceptors at any moment in time to completely wipe out whatever, well, not wipe out, but generally dissuade or largely destroy most of the incoming air targets. We probably see in a realistic aerial engagement, much like we did at the beginning of the 12-Day War, that the coalition's air defenses would probably be around the 92 to 94% efficacy rate, meaning that only 6% of the air targets would make it through the air defense perimeters. Then we also have to consider that while while that's going on, the U.S. Air Force is also, along with the Israeli Air Force, trying to target and destroy the Iranian transporter-erector launchers that fired the missiles, and also the drone launching forces that fired off those drones, meaning that day over day, the Iranians' abilities, also due to their own incompetence, and also the destruction of these launchers, are going to decrease in their rate of fire, and also how quick they can keep up that tempo, which also means that with each passing day, the air defense scenario after about the third day will generally heavily be in America's favor if it wasn't already. So I would generally have to say that I think the air defense scenario is well in hand, at least in my honest opinion, and I don't really think there would be a significant threat posed by an Iranian or an attempted Iranian overwhelming attack. But with that, we do have to move into more news that we've gotten throughout the Middle East. And we have also been able to hear that apparently the major cargo carrier Hapag-Lloyd, which is absolutely huge, mind you all, is rerouting 4 voyages of its, I believe it's its intermodal shipping container vessels away from the Suez Canal and sending them all the way around the Horn of Africa due to security concerns. This is giving us an idea that they're apparently getting some information, probably from the German government, that they believe that strikes are going to be happening really soon, and they don't want to see larger German vessels possibly under the threat of being fired upon and maybe even damaged or sinking in the midst of this ongoing conflict, because the Houthis may be active in the midst of this, meaning that passages to and fro from the Suez Canal will be fairly arduous and quite dangerous for the crews. We've also heard within Israel some further information, such as the movements and deployments of Iron Dome missile systems within the country, and we've also been able to see a large number still, and even larger number as a matter of fact, of KC-135s. It now appears to be 5 of them that are based at the Tel Aviv International Airport, still showing a growing U.S. air presence within the state of Israel. We've also been able to hear in a very interesting development that apparently the Secretary of State will be traveling to Israel, and the Secretary will discuss a range of regional priorities, including Iran, Lebanon, and ongoing efforts to implement the 20-point peace plan for Gaza, but apparently will not be bringing any press pool with them. That's wildly unusual. We cannot point out how unusual that is. This has basically never happened in the entirety of this administration, where the Secretary of State has traveled without I guess you could say, a press convoy coming with him. So we're believing that this might be a feint, just to be entirely honest with y'all. We don't believe we're thinking he might not be showing up, because if he's not bringing a press pool, that's wildly unusual, and considering that this is going to be happening on Monday and Tuesday, and there's still the weekend to go, this might be an attempt to make it look like things are normal when they're not. But moving on from that news, we've also heard some national governments continuing to make statements that their citizens should leave Iran immediately. We were able to see that the Italian government made these statements for their citizens to leave Iran today, and we've even seen that the People's Republic of China's foreign ministry, or the embassy of the People's Republic of China in the Islamic Republic of Iran, made the statement that its citizens must leave Iran as soon as possible, largely showing that apparently they are also believing, according to their own military intelligence, that strikes are going to be happening fairly soon, and for that reason, citizens inside of Iran of the People's Republic of China should leave at once. This is making a lot of people wonder, do the Chinese have some information that others don't? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so the Chinese have a bit of a habit when it comes to ordering evacuations. They usually wait until the very last second to do it because I guess they're just ballers like that. They just kind of like gangsters a little bit. They tell people to leave before it's like right about to happen, basically. So now Russia and China are warning citizens to flee Iran quickly, and also we have heard that evacuations are underway at some of these places. So are strikes going to happen this weekend? Do you dare make another prediction? 65% said yep, strikes are happening this weekend, while 12% said nope, no strikes this weekend, and 12% said two more weeks or so, or something like that, and a little bit crazy behind it. But I would say I really don't want to take a guess. I'll be honest. I don't want to do that again because I've made 2 or 3 guesses so far, and it's simply impossible. We do not have enough information to make a proper guess. The indications that strikes are coming are there, but it's been there for the past couple of weeks and it hasn't happened. So we'll just have to see. I'm going to say 2 more weeks or so. Crazy face. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'm going to have to say 2 more weeks because I'd have to say, folks, it always appears wildly obvious what's going to be happening, but I can't say it enough. If you don't like this, then that's tough for you. You're going to have to learn how to live with it. But the current administration is wildly unpredictable, and to be entirely honest with y'all, it flies by the seam of its pants on every single thing that it's doing. So it doesn't have a clue what it even wants to do. And they're even trying to figure out whether they're going to be bombing Iran this weekend or not. So, it could happen this weekend. It might not happen this weekend. And before anyone comes in here and says they're playing 4D chess, if they were, things would be turning out a lot better than they have been. And we wouldn't be here right now talking about having to bomb Iran again, being entirely frank. So they aren't playing 4D chess. They don't even know what the hell they're doing. So, generally, they don't know. We don't know. And because of that, we have no clue. Now, one thing I can say is that, and a lot of people are going to be like, what do you mean they don't know that they're bombing? Well, all the forces are in the area right now, and the war plan has clearly been laid out, and everyone's literally just sitting around waiting to go. But the thing is that they have to wait for the order to go. That means that at some point the order will be given, and probably within a day or two of that order being issued, the attacks will then be carried out. But that doesn't mean that they have to actually know, some sort of esoteric knowledge that in 2 months, when the fart of the mouse happens in Iraq and, the moons align, they're going to bomb them at this time. They don't really even have a clue of what they're doing or what they're deciding. So, if you don't like that, I'm sorry, you need to grow thicker skin, but that's the reality of it, because we saw that in Venezuela, and we've seen that during the 12-day war last year, and we've seen that in a whole bunch of other instances as well. So with that in mind, I hope that does address that the best I can. And moving us on from that, just to get us through the rest of our Middle Eastern news before we move on, we did get to hear that they are expediting ground operations at Muwafaq. We already covered that generally earlier. And one last thing, an Omani diplomat has stated that Iran agreed to zero enriched uranium stockpiling in talks breakthrough. But the problem is that there are no talks going on right now between the U.S. and Iran. So I don't know where this breakthrough happened, but according to some Omani mediator, it did happen. But then we also heard statements out of the U.S. government today, which indicated that did not happen at all, and that the negotiation process has been absolutely disappointing. So a little bit interesting with that. But with that in mind, folks, it's finally time for us to move on out of the Middle East and into another far-flung corner of the world. And I'm sure that many of you are like, oh, wow, I wonder what sort of succulent, crazy news that the enforcers are going to bring us to next. Is it going to be some sort of a far-flung, exotic land like the central jungles of Mexico? Or is it going to be maybe China? Or is it going to be Europe even? The beautiful vistas, cities, and fields and farms of Europe. No, it's Afghanistan. It's just about 200 miles east. It's literally basically within the same geographical area, and we're about to be moving on into this war because it has been going crazy, and the Pakistanis are steamrolling the Taliban right now. It's absolutely insane. But before we get into this news, I do have to say that we are entirely appreciative and extremely thankful for about 184,000 people watching the show so far in about an hour and 15 minutes, and also about the 27,000 people who were here at the peak of the stream tonight. We're always entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many people continue to consider this channel to be their primary source of news, and I got to thank you all so much for being here with us and watching this news tonight. If y'all are enjoying, please make sure to subscribe. We're very close to something happening with Iran, and when I mean close, it could be tomorrow or about a month from now or 2 months from now, even, just to be incredibly generous. Something is going to be happening, though, here in the near future, and if you subscribe right now, we go live immediately once major breaking developments happen. This stream that you're watching right now is actually a part of our normal 24-hour news cycle, and this stream goes live at the same time every night, every day, but Mondays, every week. But if something major happens, like Iran gets bombed, we literally go live within minutes of a major event happening like that, and we cover it live in real time as it's actually unfolding. So make sure to subscribe now. It will pay dividends for you in the future once the big one happens. But in the meantime, we are going to take a moment to address 3 questions from the chat before we move on into the Pakistan-Afghan war. And Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so jumping into our first 3 super chat questions here. Our first one is going to go to none other than Rick Galentian, our viewer all the way from Canada. And thank you very much, Rick, for that $100 support, and we appreciate that very much. That's very generous of you. And he said, greetings from Vancouver, and this is for your dinner tomorrow, and I have a feeling you'll be too busy to cook.
Oh yeah, we've been too busy to cook a lot recently. We've been heavy on the video grind and the news grind every night for the show, and it gives very little time to be able to cook, honestly. I actually don't really think I've cooked much at all since we've moved out here to Utah, because things have been busy basically endlessly since we moved to Utah, which has been pretty crazy. I don't even know if Matthew cooks. Matthew, do you ever cook at all?
I cook all the time. And some said I was walking past my front door today, and all of a sudden I got a notification on my phone, and it said we've detected motion at your front door. And I was like, I mean, what can I say? I mean, I'm cooking.
Man, God forbid. Like, man, but anyways,
I'll tell you, I got that motion. I'll tell you.
man, God forbid, it forced to get a little motion. But anyways, beyond that though, I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. For everyone who's new here tonight, we are an ad-free, sponsor-free live stream that runs every single night, covering the news from around the world every day of the week, but Mondays at the same time every night, which is 10 p.m. Eastern time. Because we do not take ad money or sponsor money, the only way that we're able to do this as a full-time job is through crowd-funded viewer support, like all the folks who have super chat tonight. And we are greatly appreciative to each and every single one of them, because they help this channel to keep running, and they help us to be able to do this as a full-time job and cover the news diligently and loyally every single day for the millions of people who watch the Enforcer channel every month. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again for that unbelievably massive support and helping everyone to be able to see another night of news once again from the Enforcer channel. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one is also another $100 support, very generous, from Nick Hines. He's throwing those in all the time these days, and thank you very much, Nick, for that support. We appreciate that very, very much. Very large support. He said 26,000 are watching now, and good to see the LSA is growing.
I gotta thank you incredibly for the support, Nick Hines, all the way up there from Canada. And yes, the LSA is certainly growing, that is for sure. I believe that right now we are getting fairly close to hitting 543,000 subscribers right now, so it is growing quite significantly over the recent days, as everyone's really counting down the hours at this point to some sort of military action on Iran. And I gotta thank you incredibly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because you're helping us to stay on air and continue to grow the amazing community of the Enforcer channel, the Lee Spring Army, also called the LSA. If you are a part of the LSA, put an LSA in the chat so that way we can see y'all. And so with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again for that amazing support, Nick, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the last question of this segment, and then we'll be moving on into the Pakistan-Afghan war and the rest of the news from around the world.
Yes, indeed. And our last one of the segment goes to Richard McGurl, who puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Richard, for that generous support as well, and for being a longtime channel legend, just like Rick and Nick as well. And almost rhymes. But Richard said, keep up the good work. It's the only news I'll watch.
And thank you so much for the incredible support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say, we're entirely honored to know that folks like you are up there in helping this channel to keep on running and making this thing possible, all the way up there in Vancouver. And so I gotta thank you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And thank you so much for being a part of the amazing, indomitable, and ever-growing Lee Spring Army. Long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And with that, folks, it is time for us, while the chat has quite truly exploded off of its seams. I mean, the chat is being flooded with LSAs. Very nice to see. We love to see it here. We love to see it. It is time for us, folks, to move on out of this question segment and on into the next pieces of major news that we have from around the world. Moving us on just 200 miles east of Iran and into Afghanistan and Pakistan, we can report that as of today, the might and combined arms of the Taliban have largely been defeated by the Pakistanis, and it appears that the Pakistanis are on the back foot. Quite badly, I'd actually have to say. It seems as though they have completely lost the initiative within about 3 hours. The Pakistani government did claim today that they are, at a minimum, going to be preparing a sanitary zone inside of the Afghan border, meaning that they will be creating a zone of control that extends several miles deep into Afghanistan and controlling that probably for an indefinite period. They have also stated that they will not stop their combat activities now until they achieve their objectives inside of Afghanistan, which they did state was the overthrow of the Taliban and the eventual capture or death of Osama bin Laden. Oh, I'm sorry, that's 2001. We're in 2026 now. They stated that they were going to just keep conducting their battlefield objectives until they achieve their aims, which at the moment we don't know what those are exactly, but apparently it's getting the Taliban a little worried. You know why? Because they announced today that they were going to be conducting a large offensive, a wave of attacks on Pakistani forces in defense of the Afghan Taliban regime. This was stated by Noor Wali Masood. This guy right here, which I'm not going to lie, looks like an Afghan version of Steven Seagal.
Yeah, honestly, it does. I'm not sure how to describe his look right here. This guy's got something going. Also, by the way, the gold-rimmed glasses, I'm like, what the hell? I didn't know that was a thing.
Man, he's got that blicky from O-Block back there. I don't even know what the hell that thing is. Like, that doesn't even look like a normal gun at all.
Man, those are the curtains my grandmother used to have back there in the background right there. This guy's got that grandma drip.
Dude, this guy sent this white shirt to the dry cleaners and had it starched before this picture was taken, man. I didn't even know they had a dry cleaners in the regions of northern Afghanistan where most of the Taliban comes from. And also, I gotta say, man, look at this vertical foregrip on this gun right here. If he was actually shooting that, I think his upper finger would get seared by the muzzle blast because the muzzle would literally be in line with his fingers, or at least the muzzle brake
Oh, yeah.
would be.
Yeah, and also it looks like it's a plastic foregrip too, so that's not going to last in a real battle. Thing's going to snap off probably if you drop it once or twice.
Also, someone said that that appears to be a CZ Scorpion. And, I mean, oh my god, it is. It actually is a CZ Scorpion. So it's this gun right here.
That's actually not a bad looking gun. I don't know why. He kind of trashed it a little bit. It doesn't look good for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, it looks terrible. And why the hell would you put a vertical foregrip that far forward? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm not going to lie, folks. That gun is really badly fitted out with that vertical foregrip, and it looks like it folds. But anyways, he was the guy who made the statement today that they're going to be conducting major attacks against Pakistan. That didn't really pan out, though. I mean, every single scene that we got from the border today was generally showing that the Pakistanis were laying the Taliban to waste. This clip right here was actually taken by the Pakistani military and was showing a border outpost near Bandar Abba, I believe it's, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, completely on fire and largely destroyed. We'll show you all this clip right here. It sounds like,
Oh my god!
sounds like they're a little stressed. Like, you know, at least the Pakistanis bombing this place are. I mean, let's listen to this guy again. He was absolutely just crashing out. Yeah, I think that's a straight up crash out. Like, okay, this guy's just crashing out the whole clip.
Man, he's going off back there. I thought these guys were winning. What are they freaking out so bad about?
Man, bro, they're freaking out because they're not winning hard enough, man. They said, we have to win all the way. Like, bro, it's like, man, it's like, oh, you are. It's like, just give it a minute. You know, it's like, y'all are generally. Also, by the way, the U.S. has generally backed Pakistan in this conflict and stated that Pakistan has a right to defend itself and so on and so forth. We also get to see further on down that more outposts were taken by the Pakistanis along the border, this down in the Kandahar plains. We were able to see this clip coming out from the Pakistani army showing that they had taken control of a border outpost that the Taliban was operating right across the border inside of Afghanistan. Here is that clip. Oh, I'm getting flashbacks from Syria, folks. Like, I'm not gonna lie. But you see the Pakistani flag up there above the border outpost, clearly showing that they have taken it. The rest of it is them just doing their normal war chants and so on, so we won't be showing that. We've also been able to see that in Kandahar, it appears that Pakistani airstrikes by satellite photography have already been confirmed to be showing visible damage to Taliban military facilities. We have seen that multiple base buildings within one Taliban military camp appear to have been completely destroyed by the Pakistani airstrikes. And interestingly enough, the Pakistanis decided not to bomb the motor pool, I believe because most of that equipment is probably not operational. And apparently they were able to assess that as well by seeing that the same equipment was sitting in the same spot probably for years on end. So instead they went for other facilities at the military base and appeared to have been able to knock out a significant amount of the facility. Meanwhile, moving us further on up and towards the area of the border region near to Lazai on the Pakistani side, we also were able to see that the Taliban did get one small victory today, and they were able to take 14 Pakistani soldiers prisoner within one area of the front. We can see the Afghans here taking the Pakistani soldiers prisoner. And apparently, like, stripping him of his clothes. They said, nice cut, G, and then they started to take his ballistic vests and everything as well. Huh. We can see the camera.
Interesting tactic. Never really seen prisoners being processed quite like that, but I guess to each his own.
Man, the Taliban said, nice shoes, give him. Like, man, it's like, oh, it's like.
So, the Afghans said, oh, we surrender, please don't shoot, The guy said, okay, we'll take you in. Run your pockets. Like, damn, okay.
Man, honestly, man, the Taliban has got an interesting way of taking prisoners. Pakistani said, please, don't do anything to us. They said, we're not going to do anything to you. Do you have a wallet on you? Is there any cash in that? Like, man, it's like, interesting sorts of processing strategies there. But anyways, we also were able to see that the Taliban special forces were also moving into this area. And of course, they had to add in the normal, like, the clash of the sword, the swing of the blade sort of music. So I have to mute the clip. But you can see them moving in towards the border right here. And boy, they look special. They got enough Toyota Land Cruisers to last a lifetime.
What's special about these forces? Like normal technicals with machine guns. What's the difference? I don't see any difference at all.
It's just that some Taliban forces call themselves special or elite, and that's literally the only reason they're called a special force, by the way.
Interesting. Yeah, they don't look very special.
It's kind of like how, like some like gangs would call themselves like the real gunslingers or something like that, and it's like they're not even like, it's like they don't even have any like real rifle discipline or pistol discipline, but they call themselves that, and it's like it's really just because they name themselves that and they get to call themselves that even when they're going to war in Toyotas.
Oh, that one has a flat tire. That's no special force. It's just like some janky force thing's rolling on a flat.
Yo, yo.
Oh yeah, the only thing special about this force, they need some new tires.
I think the only thing this force is special in is it's special in mental capacity, because running on a flat tire over dozens of miles doesn't really speak, well trained, really on, head on a swivel sort of special forces. You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't see Delta Force riding into combat on a flat tire. But moving on.
Yeah, really. I tell you what, that's horrible to roll into battle on a flat tire. That's rough.
So moving us on closer towards Jalalabad, which is really the largest city that Afghanistan.
Jalopy bad.
The sloppy bad, or Jalalabad.
No,
That's
jalopy. It's jalopy bad. It's the city of flat tires.
Dude, bruh, where did you buy this truck that has flat tires? Inshallah, I bought it in Jalapabad. Like, man, but anyways, we get to see that apparently the Taliban, I don't even know if this clip is actually correlated with the Taliban, but some sort of media agency put out today this clip of MLRS fire. And I mean, it was massive. I don't think that's the Taliban, because I have not heard of the Pakistanis coming to rocket barrage at all today, but I had to put this on the map just in case. But I don't think that's even a legit video, to be entirely frank with y'all. We also were able to see, though, a actual legit one where the Pakistanis had taken over another border outpost and were taking down the flag of the Taliban that was flying over it. Some of y'all will actually notice that this Pakistani soldier handles the Taliban flag with a significant amount of respect. He doesn't just throw it to the ground, and that's actually because the Taliban flag has a very significant inscription, or basically a verse from the Quran on it, and since the Pakistanis are largely Islamic as well, they generally view the flag with a great deal of deference, even with it being the flag of their enemy, because of the religious inscription written onto the banner. So we can actually see that he's folding it up and not letting it touch the ground and then handing it off to the other soldier, who then takes it and I guess puts it in a truck or something along those lines. And now we can see them putting out the Pakistani flag.
So does this mean that the Pakistanis now own some part of Afghanistan?
Yes, it does. They're actually controlling ground in Afghanistan in a large amount of areas.
Hey, has the United States ever thought about this? Like, they're always trying to make real estate deals and stuff. Like, have they ever thought about just, like, taking it? That's the freest way to do it.
Man, like, that's a great question. We ought to get Anthropic on that one. But anyways, moving on from that, we also get to see the Pakistanis moving in and taking over this NATO outpost that actually existed within the Khwaja Khizar sector in the Pakistan-Afghani border. We saw them raising their flag over this border outpost. There was the Taliban flag earlier in the day, and now there's the Pakistani flag. So they are definitely gaining ground inside of Afghanistan. That is for sure. We don't know how far they intend on going. We do know that at a minimum they're going to be creating a sanitary zone probably several miles deep along the whole of the border, but we don't know how much farther they're going to be going beyond that. We also got to see that near to the area of Mikhattalam, which is just to the south, northwest of Jalalabad, or Jalapabad, or Shlapibad, it appears that the Taliban command post that was largely trying to coordinate most military activities for the Taliban, it got vaporized. The smoke right there is rising from that very command post. So we think that the Taliban's Pentagon got wiped out today in an airstrike. Can't really say that for certain, but it looks highly likely that it did.
Yeah, I can't believe the Taliban even have a Pentagon. And why does everybody want a Pentagon?
Because it's famous. It's iconic. It's grand. I'll show y'all where that was actually. That was up here in this town somewhere. And I mean, it's not like a Ministry of Defense building or anything like that. It was basically just a whole bunch of houses that they kind of commandeered to make a command center, and it got obliterated. That's what we think happened. So we'll be waiting to see, and we'll probably figure that out here in the near future. But beyond that, we are going to be moving on from that little bit of news, because I'm sure, folks, that in the midst of this all, I'm sure that the Taliban is showing a great deal of solidarity and unity within their government, and are making sure to face the existential threat to their existence as a state with a great deal of, I guess you could say, honor and dignity and unity. There's probably no governmental backstabbing going on in there, and I can tell you that that's a lie. The Taliban has started to shoot each other up within Kabul in the midst of the war that they're losing with Pakistan, as multiple different factions of the Taliban are now trying to take control of the government. So not only is the Taliban at war with every faction of the Taliban is at war with Pakistan, now every faction of the Taliban is also at war with each other while they're losing the war with Pakistan. So this just got that much more complicated. We don't even know which factions are the ones actually fighting, but we could hear gunfire throughout the entirety of the city of Kabul, which is giving us an idea that there is a significant battle going on between the different Taliban groups. Man,
What a bad time for a family feud. A bad time for a family feud, honestly. It's like in the middle of getting attacked by a pretty powerful force, which is Pakistan. They're going to start fighting with each other. It seems like a recipe for disaster.
Man, I got to say, folks, the Taliban doesn't pose a threat to literally anybody, because a stiff wind comes in their direction, they all start killing each other in Kabul. I think this gives us a pretty good idea that the Taliban can never really coalesce itself into anything that will pose a threat to Pakistan, the United States, or really anyone else. I mean, they're capable of causing some chaos near to the borders of Afghanistan, but beyond that, they can't really do much of anything else, and they've been losing the war with Pakistan ever since the third hour in. I mean, even in the first 3 hours, it was basically kind of like a slight toss-up, and then it clearly went in Pakistan's direction, and it's never changed since. So, I guess that is what it is. It looks like the Taliban might eat itself alive in the midst of the war, where Pakistan's also attempting to destroy the Taliban. But this also brings us into the question, what is the goal of Pakistan within Afghanistan? Every single country in this region has a stand in it. I mean, it gets so difficult because it's Pakistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Kazakhstan. It's so hard. Pakistan in a war against Afghanistan. That doesn't really roll off the tongue easy. It sounds like a tongue twister, honestly. But beyond that, Matthew, what are people thinking about this? And what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so largely speaking, Pakistan is really putting the hurt on the Taliban. Rumor has it that Pakistanis are going to start a moving company called Pakrat, and they're going to help the Taliban to find a new home. That's the rumor on the street. So Pakistan says it will continue the Afghan war until its goals are met. So what is the goal of Pakistan at this point? And it looks like the polls pretty much all over the place. 30% said to force the Taliban to make a deal, while 28% said to get quick revenge on the Taliban, and 28% also said to fully defeat the Taliban. And I think what the Pakistanis are up to right now is it's mainly motivated by revenge. That's number one. They're trying to get revenge for these terror attacks that have been taking place on their border. But ultimately, it seems like they're out for blood. Like, it seems like they actually want to fully defeat the Taliban, and I think they're going to go for it. I'm not sure if it's really going to actually take place, because actually holding Afghanistan is a whole nother situation than simply trying to fight the Taliban. So I'm going to say I'm going to 29%. I think they're going to go for it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I think that they're probably going to be going for a full defeat of the Taliban, because with their sort of rhetoric that they're making right now, it seems as though they're saying that the Afghans are largely a proxy of the Indians. And also on top of that, we do have to keep in mind, everyone, that it was the Taliban that begged Pakistan for the ceasefire that the Taliban just broke yesterday. So I would say that clearly as a result of that, the Pakistanis aren't going to be wanting to get a ceasefire with them, because they're not going to trust them at their word anymore, because they just broke the ceasefire that they begged for. So for that reason, I think that the Pakistanis are going to be trying to go for the complete defeat or significant humiliation of the Taliban to make them think twice about doing anything like that again. So with that in mind, I hope that does address that well. And moving on from that, it's now time for us to move out of this area of the world, the Middle East and generally the Indian subcontinent and Central Asia. And it's now time for us to head west Head west, young man, head west. We were able to confirm today that the cartel war is still going on between the Jalisco cartel and the Mexican government, and we also got this wild clip today from Twitter, which showed us the Jalisco cartel actually using drone-dropped grenades like in the Ukraine war. This is actually crazy, folks. And it's really even wilder to believe that the cartel is now implementing some of the most cutting-edge tactics that is used in modern warfare, which is drone warfare. We can actually see them lining up the bomblet on a building below. And then, basically in the same configuration as the Ukrainians, I guess they turn on the drone light and it dropped the bomblet. I'm not going to lie. Pretty crazy stuff to see. The cartel war, by the way, everyone, is actually going on across the entirety of the central area of Mexico still. We haven't seen the Gulf cartel do anything about the capture of one of their top leaders at the moment, generally because he was taken alive. But we do understand this cartel war in central Mexico is going to be going on for some time, considering that El Tuli and El Mencho have actually both been killed within the past week, and it does appear that due to that, the Jalisco cartel is greatly incensed, and they're going to be trying to conduct as much vengeance as possible on the Mexican government that they can, including drone warfare, much like that. We've also been able to hear an announcement from Vandenberg Space Force Base that the Air Force Global Strike Command has announced an operational test launch of an Air Force Global Strike Command unarmed Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile scheduled between 11:01 p.m. to 5:01 a.m. Pacific time on the 3rd and 4th of March from northern Vandenberg Space Force Base. The purpose of the ICBM test launch program is to validate and verify the effectiveness, readiness, and accuracy of the weapons system according to the AFGSC, which is the Air Force Global Strike Command. So it does appear that we'll be getting a little ICBM missile test here in about a week or so. We've also been able to hear out of the U.S. government today some fairly interesting developments in the form that the president has stated that he's not concerned over oil prices in case of U.S. strikes in Iran. I'm assuming that that means that they've already taken it into consideration that they need to bomb out the Iranian Navy before they can lay a minefield and completely create an effective blockade, well, a total blockade of the strait. And if they haven't, then that's going to be something that is going to bite the president in the ass if they didn't take that in consideration and they don't follow through with that. But we'll have to see what happens with that one. I'm sure with the competency of our government officials and the fact that they're always playing four-dimensional chess, it just oddly seems that they kind of like don't really think that far ahead. I'm sure that they've thought about bombing out the Iranian Navy before they can pose a significant threat and pretty much pretty much mine the Strait of Hormuz and generally ensure that a large amount of the Middle Eastern oil traffic from the Gulf states wouldn't be able to transit and then be sold in the global oil market. But moving us on out of that news, and on towards Europe, as we are finally getting close, folks, to the war in Ukraine and all of the major developments that have gone on in Europe today, we did get to hear that the British government did state that the evacuations of non-emergency personnel and their family members, of at least as far as the United States is concerned, to leave Israel and basically everything east of Israel is a clear sign that there are flashing red lights on the dashboard and that strikes will be happening soon. Once again, corroborating our claims that at this moment, it could be any day now for the U.S. to start conducting strikes against the Iranians inside the Middle East. Further on than that, we've also been able to hear out of Sweden today an update on a major situation and development that happened yesterday. Many of y'all will remember that within the area of Malmö, Sweden, we were able to hear that the French nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, the only nuclear-powered aircraft carrier in the world outside of the United States Navy, was buzzed by a drone just the other day inside the port of Malmö. We heard that then afterwards, the Swedish military then tried to conduct countermeasures against the drone, and the drone was then lost shortly after. We're still not sure at the moment whether that means that the drone dipped into the water and went under the water and they just haven't been able to recover it, or whether the drone was able to escape the countermeasures and fly back to wherever it came from. The Swedish Ministry of Defense has now added a great deal of additional information to this today and has announced that they have confirmed that a Russian drone flew towards the French aircraft carrier and was observed taking off from the Russian signals intelligence vessel, the Zhigulevsk, in the Oresund area. So it actually...
Holy moly. They actually saw the thing taking off. That's crazy. They didn't really tell us that detail yesterday. They said the drone simply targeted at least close to the airspace of the Charles de Gaulle carrier, but they didn't say that they literally came straight from a Russian ship. That means the thing must have been pretty close by, actually.
And let me see if I can go and find y'all a picture of the Zhigulevsk, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And let me go get this right here. Jesus. This is where they launched it from.
Oh, damn. They launched it from a garbage scow, but they still launched it nonetheless. I wonder what kind of drone it was, by the way. Was it like a big, like, fixed wing, or was it a quad? What type of drone was it, I wonder?
They really haven't gotten into a lot of details on that at the moment. We actually do not know. But we will have to say that this ship is a little bit of an improvement from the last Zhigalevsk, seen in this picture here, which
Oh
truly
my
is a garbage
god.
cow.
Oh my god, that thing's bad.
I think if I've heard correctly, I believe that this one was used by the city of New York's waste management. Like I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But this is the vessel that is believed to have launched the drone, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the direction of Orison should be. Well, hell, it actually was right around Malmo. So literally, while this boat's just scooting around in the Orison Strait, they fired off a drone literally just miles away at the Charles de Gaulle, violated Swedish airspace in the process, and then violated the French aircraft carrier's security perimeter in the process as well. That is a pretty crazy development to hear about, and it's even crazier to hear that the Swedes now apparently have undeniable proof that it was launched from this little shitter right here, literally just a couple of miles away. So I would assume, Matthew, now that we have the answer at the range, considering that it was short range, it could have been any variety of drone. It could have been fixed wing, a quadcopter. I would assume that it's something that can probably vertically take off and land easily, which would make me believe that it's probably a quadcopter of some sort, or something larger, like maybe something similar to a Baba Yaga type drone.
Yeah, it could be because remember they shot electronic warfare weapons at the drone. They said the drone fell out of the sky or it disappeared or something, and they couldn't really track where it went. So it's kind of a little bit weird with that. It could have been small enough where they actually could not track the thing, so they couldn't even see where it fell. That could be how small it was.
It definitely could be. And we'll have to generally wait and see what's going on with this situation and how the Swedes will respond to it, considering that this is quite literally a blatant challenge of their sovereignty over their skies and also threatening the Charles de Gaulle, which I do have to tell you all once again, I cannot hype up the Charles de Gaulle enough. It is the only nuclear-powered aircraft carrier in the world that is not operated by the United States Navy. It's also the largest aircraft carrier operational in the whole world, except for the Nimitz and Ford classes that are operated by the United States Navy. So in terms of strategic significance, this is without a doubt the largest threat that the Russians could make that was not directed to the United States in terms of a strategic target, like an aircraft carrier. Moving on from that, it is time for us to get on out of Sweden and on into the Russian Federation, because it is finally time, folks, for us to get into the greater war in Ukraine, which has been going swimmingly, actually. It's actually been going quite well today. The Ukrainians have announced something that is absolutely amazing. They have now announced that the FP7, which was another missile that was being developed within their homegrown missile programs, was tested successfully today and will be entering serial production and combat service here within the very near future, much like its counterpart, the Flamingo, which has already been used to great success against multiple targets within the Russian Federation, including most recently the missile production facility at the city of Votkinsk. We were able to see here the Firepoint company putting out this video of the successful test of the FP7. And look at it go.
Look at that thing go. That's a big one right there, doing some damage.
Let me see.
What's crazy is the most recent kill of this missile was a missile factory. So the brand new missile that's very potent took out literally a factory that produces missiles. Very interesting.
And let me see here if I can get some information on this. So this missile has an operational range of about 200 kilometers, so that would be about 150 miles, with a top speed of about 1,500 meters a second, which is about, let's see, that would be about several Mach. I'm not really sure how fast that would be in reality in Mach speed, but it is incredibly fast. That's a kilometer and a half, or about 1.1 or 1.2 miles per second, and a warhead weight of about 150 kilograms. So this is going to be a fairly competent missile system that we cannot doubt, and it does appear that it will be conducting a significant amount of damage against the Russian Federation here within the near future. We also have to point out that they don't even need to have the FP7 in service yet to be causing hell and chaos within the entirety of Russia. They just have to have their current available fleet of missiles, either domestically produced or provided to them from foreign sources, and also their long-range drone forces to be able to conduct a wide variety of damage throughout the Russian Federation. We were able to confirm that today the following regions came under the threat of flight restrictions and also drone alerts. The areas of flight restrictions included Kazan, Orenburg, and Saratov, and these are the following oblasts that were under an aerial threat or an aerial raid or attack. This would include the Kursk Oblast, the Belgorod Oblast, the Krasnodar Krai Oblast, the Rostov Oblast, the Volgograd Oblast, the Astrakhan Oblast. I believe this would be the Saratov Oblast, the Tatarstan Oblast, and also, let's see, that would be the Nenetsky Oblast, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and also the Samolskoye Oblast as well over here, which includes the town of Saman. So it does appear that largely everywhere within Russia, at least within the southern part of the country, has come under a significant attack today. And there were also drone warnings, kind of like tornado warnings, within the area of, let's see, that would be, oh, dang, let me go make sure that I get the name of that town correctly. That would be Ulyanovsk right here. And then there was also the Ryazan Oblast, the, let's see. Shoot, let me see here. Okay, that would be the Lipetsk. I don't know why I had such a hard... That's the Lipetsk Oblast and the Bryansk Oblast that also came under drone warnings today. Let me get y'all to that clip, though, letting y'all hear the little air raid sirens in Russia.
Ah, it's hurting my head.
Oh, man.
Damn, that was resonating. I felt like that was that weapon that they're firing at people. What do they call that thing? The discombobulator? Like cavitation in your head, like resonating in your skull. Like that was really doing a number on me. For a minute, I felt like I was like having a minute.
Man, honestly, it was that air raid siren wasn't really pleasing to the ears. I think the attacks in Russia really aren't pleasing to the Russians' ears. But you know something that's even crazier, Matthew, is that today we have been able to confirm that for the first time, the Perm Oblast came under a drone warning or an air attack warning. This is the first time in the entirety of the war that this has happened. And let me show you all the range at which this attack was conducted. This attack was conducted at around a 1,000-mile range, meaning that either Ukrainian drones, missiles, or drones and missiles were able to reach 1,000 miles into the Russian Federation to the foothills of the Urals, which is right here in this oblast, and were able to cause an air raid over the city of Perm. Here's a clip of the air raid sirens going off within the city. I'm not gonna lie, this looks like the Escape from Tarkov, but anyways.
Ah, yes, dystopian hell.
Everyone will have to pack up their bags and leave for a minimum of 3 days. Only take what you need for the minimum stay. Buses will be in the town square to take you away to where you need to be.
Man, it's whenever you hear anyone speaking on a megaphone in Russia, it generally means bad things are coming. We also were able to hear that, of course, the air alert was issued. Where to find shelter in Perm from missile danger. You can find out the address of the nearest shelter or evacuation point at the Training and Consultation Center at your management company or administration. Information is also available through state services. A request can be made once a day. So once you call, F you, you're going to have to figure it out on your own if you forget. Man, state service, they literally have a DDoS protection for phone calls. 1 call a day. If you call up again and go, excuse me, where is the bomb shelter? They're going to go, what's your name? My name is Vadim Veskolokibov. You already called once today. F you die. Click. They're very interesting government service policy right there. If there is no shelter nearby, windowless spaces are also suitable. Basements, underground parking lots, and walkways. This means that the Redditors of Russia in the basements are safe. Let us remind you that today a missile threat was declared for the first time in the Perm region, which even means that the Russians confirmed that this was the first time that this has happened. We don't know what exactly was hit within Perm today. We haven't got any video or picture evidence, but an air raid alert was sounded, meaning that there were drones and missiles in the airspace of Perm. It's just that we don't know exactly what they hit yet. Moving us on out of Perm, however, and on towards the general area of the northern regions north of Moscow, we were able to see that within the area of the Kalikino pumping station, the fire is still burning, and the fire still spreads.
Holy moly! That's a fire and a half.
You know, I gotta say, if you put a chicken on like a spit, close enough to this fire, and you spun it, would it have the same quality, the same texture and juiciness as a Costco $5 chicken?
Probably with a side of carcinogens, possibly, because I'm not sure what this is burning in this pile here, but I mean, it could be nasty.
Yes, this tastes like oil. Man, but
cancer risk, be careful about this carcinogens.
And, in Russia, they don't have any warning labels, like they don't exist. We also got to hear inside of Russia that apparently there was an explosion on Kadyrov Street. They named a street after the ham and cheddar man in Moscow. I never knew that, but there was an explosion on Kadyrov Street today, and I heard that the police showed up at dawn and took a little look around the dawn. We don't know why this happened. We didn't even hear that anyone got killed or wounded in this, but some sort of an explosion happened, and basically every law enforcement unit in the city showed up. So here's the clip. That's a lot of guys.
5 guys.
More than 5 guys. This is like 20 guys, loads of burgers and fries at exorbitantly high cost that make it basically unaffordable to eat there now, but that's beyond the point. Moving on from that, though, it does appear that there was a little incident in Moscow. The Russians, of course, didn't really elaborate on what happened or why that happened or why they're all out there. We'll find that out, though, later, I'm sure. But it's now time for us folks to move on into the war in Ukraine. As we all know, there's a lot going on in Ukraine these days. The Russians are losing ground. The Russians are taking heavy losses. The Ukrainians are generally slamming the Russian Federation. I mean, as far as the war has been going over the past 3 years, it's a pretty decent time to be in the state of Ukraine or in the Ukrainian armed forces, at least as far as how the war is going. Generally, the Ukrainians have the upper hand, at least for the moment. Moving us on down into the area of our location unknowns, we were able to get the Russian casualty report over the past 24 hours. And according to Miss DC, keeper of the records, troop losses for the 7-day average rose to 1,036, but the February average is only 946. Armored personnel carriers and cruise missiles are above average, but other categories are below. And over the past 24 hours, we have been able to confirm that 1,280 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed, along with 6 APCs, 116 supply trucks, 2 main battle tanks, 17 artillery systems, 883 drones, and 37 cruise missiles. All in all, it's a pretty nice day to see, and it does appear that the Russian Federation is still taking a large amount of losses. Moving us on, oh my goodness, I forgot. Every day something happens in Belgorod. I completely forgot that something happened in Belgorod again today. There is still an ongoing fire in Belgorod from attacks that happened tonight. Totally forgot to mention that. City's in a blackout again. Everyone's crying and bitching, and the water pipes are bursting. It's a terrible time to be in Belgorod. But, there you can see the impacts in the distance.
I feel like Belgrad's getting beat up so much, it's kind of just blurring all together.
Man, every day Zelensky wakes up and he says, "Every day that Belgrade exists, it's a bane to my existence. Hit it again." And they go and slam it again. It's crazy. I mean, they literally hit Belgrade daily now.
Makes them suffer. It's kind of peaceful for it to be attacked.
I feel like this would be a chill loop video that you could play to study to,
Like a lo-fi hip-hop beat.
Like a lo-fi wartime beat. Like those Ukrainians be beating on them Russian cities, But moving on from that and on out of that little area of Belgrade, we are going to be moving on into the front lines. Sadly, folks, we didn't get a lot of combat footage today. I tried to look around the best I could, and about only 3 of them was as much as we could get. Frontline footage is fairly irregular these days in the amount that comes out from day to day. Some days we can get like 10 or 12 combat clips on the front. Other days we get 3. The losses were fairly high today, but it doesn't really appear that a lot of Ukrainians soldiers were filming today. So for that reason, sadly, we really can't show exactly what was going on the ground in great detail like we normally would. We only have a couple of snippets of what the front looked like today in some specific areas. But moving us on down into the area of the Severonsky Forest and the Lyman front, we did get to see that the 66th Mechanized Brigade was still targeting and hitting Russian forces. We see this drone here trying to find the first of them, and making sure to take care of them quite properly. We can see this loitering drone sitting on the road, and it does appear that, at least at this moment, they're hitting them.
Oh, dear. Oh.
That's just a drone.
Is this video okay?
Yeah, it's just drones. It's...
I'm getting a little worried off this video. I don't know why. It's getting me a little worried.
It's good. I can promise you, it's good, man. See, it's just drones. Matthew's got a phobia of drones. But
oh no, like the more realistic AI gets, the more I start having worrisome feelings of talking about seeing these mechanical beings getting hit like that.
Also, Randy, I don't know if you heard the memo today, but they gave us a memo about Anthropic. We're gonna have to put that out of the system. But outside of that, it does appear that they are hitting them quite heavily. Look at them go. And with that,
I
that's
feel like we'll pay for this one day.
Oh, what do you mean?
Like I feel one day, once humans are replaced by AI, I feel like we're going to pay for this.
Maybe, but we'll have to see whenever that comes around. The 30th Mechanized Brigade was also putting some numbers in on the Russian road drones that sit on the roads, wait for a Ukrainian soldier or a car to pass, and then they fly up and slam them. And the Ukrainians are making sure to take them out before they can pose a threat to anyone. Oh, man, scattered this one to pieces, bled. Reese's pieces, bled. Man, they were pretty effective at taking out these drones. Dang!
Oh my God! Look at them.
Holy
moly! Look! What are they doing? Just sitting there like that? They're just sitting there dead on the street.
No, they're waiting. They're waiting, Matthew. They're waiting for a car or a soldier to walk by, and then they take off. This is a way to conserve battery power and just basically lie in wait for some sort of a moment of opportunity and then strike once it shows up.
Damn.
So basically, it's like the video game strategy of camping. They're literally camping on the roads, waiting for people to show up, and then they take them out. And the Ukrainians are taking them out. Yeah, basically. And they're taking them out before they can take out the Ukrainians, so that's good to see. Did that owl have a hand? Oh, it had a claw. I was about to say, did that thing have a human hand? But that's the end of that clip. Nice to see, though. Moving on from that, it's also time for us to move down to Pokrovsk, where we also get to see the 68th Jaegers at work against the Russian forces near to the area of, I believe this is... Oh, dang. I'm going to have to go look. Kotliny and Udachny. Sorry, everyone. I had to go actually look at the names of the villages really quickly. But we can see them knocking out the Wi-Fi transmitters or receivers that they have around, which, you know, it's a very strong weak link for the Russians these days. Holy moly.
Really... Some of these communications towers are really feeling the hurt this time. Look at that little Wi-Fi right there. Look at that little Wi-Fi.
And that's
the Russians can't have anything nice.
They certainly cannot. And with that, that's the end of that clip. And moving us on from there, we also get to see that along the Romanian border today, a Romanian citizen actually filmed the Ukrainians shooting down a Shahed drone. We can hear it. It looks like the cameraman's looking for it. And there it is. It's right across the Danube on the Ukrainian side right there. A little moped. Man, they about to make that thing a little moped. Ooh, get him!
Oh my God. What did they do to my clapped out boosted Civic? Oh,
that's what they did to it.
VTech kicked in, yo.
Man, splashed down right in the Danube, literally on straddling the border between Ukraine and Romania. Aw, man, let's take a look at Romania. Oh, man, but anyways, that's the end of that clip right there. And it's now time for us to move on, folks, and up into Kyiv to cover the speech from the president of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky. I've got to say, folks, I can't believe that we made it to this in 2 hours. Usually it's like 2.5 hours to get to this these days. We made the news segment very well informed and a little bit shorter tonight. I'm actually a little bit proud of that because it was a lot of dense information in a little bit more of a succinct amount of time. But without further ado, here is the speech from the president of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, here on day 1465 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the speech. Peach!
Шановні українки, сьогодні була важлива зустріч з нашими урядовцями, енергетиками, військовими, з усіма, хто відповідає за захист та оновлення нашої інфраструктури. Української енергетики. Вже підготовлені детальні плани по областям, по відновленню, по оновленню захисту енергетичних об'єктів, враховуючи все те, що Росія робила зимою і що може робити далі. Я доручив доопрацювати деякі моменти та підготувати плани на рівень РНБО, затвердити саме так на загальнодержавному рівні. Що саме потрібно зробити, що саме забезпечити, хто за це відповідатиме. Я розраховую на максимальну залученість обласної та місцевої влади, тих з них, хто справді може реально працювати. Треба поширювати хороший досвід, який є в частині областей і громад для регіонів інших, хто мав більше проблем і невирішених питань цією зимою. Саме місцеві влади можуть зробити найбільший внесок у стійкість громад, знаючи, які об'єкти передусім потребують модернізації та потребують захисту. Уряд, всі інституції нашої держави, всі будуть допомагати. Є і багато військових аспектів саме того, що повинно бути реалізовано армією та Міністерством оборони. Формати, які були відпрацьовані зараз, показали свою ефективність, коли фактично кожен удар, кожне влучання детально аналізувалось і були чіткі висновки, що треба змінити. Я вдячний усім, хто працює саме так, сам змінюється, змінює підходи до оборони, щоб реально реагувати на кожну таку загрозу, ефективно захищати Україну. Сьогодні ж з прем'єр-міністром Юлією Свириденко ми обговорили вагомі соціальні кроки, які уряд підготував. Відбудеться в Україні чергова щорічна індексація пенсій. Більш ніж для 10 мільйонів наших людей. Пенсіонери отримують підвищення більш ніж на 12%. Кошти на це передбачені. Індексація має бути вже зараз, в березні. Попри усі виклики повномасштабної війни, ми щороку проводимо таку індексацію. Як би не було складно, Україна від першого року вторгнення забезпечує індексацію пенсій, всі необхідні соціальні виплати та стабільну роботу соціальної та фінансової систем держави. В умовах повномасштабної війни це дуже значний результат. Я вдячний усім, хто допомагає Україні забезпечувати це. Звісно, я вдячний кожному українському підприємцю, усім нашим компаніям, всьому українському бізнесу, який працює в Україні, який сплачує податки в Україні, зберігає та створює робочі місця та дозволяє українському бюджету працювати. Щонайменше половину видатків держави та громад українці забезпечують попри все, попри війну, попри російські удари, попри всі ці відключення. Це надзвичайно важливо, що у нас є і внутрішні основи стійкості, і наша робота з партнерами, яка забезпечує Україні безпрецедентне зовнішнє фінансування протягом цих років війни. Я говорив з нашою дипломатичною командою, також спілкуємося з людьми, які мають хороший досвід, які проявили себе в захисті українських інтересів. Зокрема, я зустрічався з Павлом Клімкіним. Готуємо посилення деяких напрямків дипломатичної роботи в Європі, не тільки. Українські інтереси мають бути представлені на офіційному рівні і в спілкуванні зі спільнотами з тих країн, які зараз ще не мають свободи або перебувають під російським впливом. Будуть кадрові зміни в дипломатичному корпусі. Також МЗС готує кандидатури для призначення спецпредставника щодо Білорусі та білоруської спільноти в Європі. Потрібна більш активна політика. І саме активність нашої держави, активність наших людей – це те, що дає Україні найкращі результати. Коли Україна не втрачає жодного дня і жодної можливості, інтереси України справді захищені. Слава Україні!
Героям слава.
And with that, that's the end of the speech from the President of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, here on day 1465 of the news from around the world. And I've got to say, folks, that we're always entirely honored and greatly appreciative that each and every single one of y'all were here tonight for our news segment. We were actually able to make this a more manageable 2-hour news segment tonight. We actually had a lot of news tonight, and we actually got through it in a very efficient amount of time, which is something that I'm actually very proud of at the moment. We also were able to see that around, 27.1 thousand of y'all were here at the peak tonight, and 235,000 people have watched the stream so far in just 2 hours, meaning that about 115,000 people have been watching the stream per hour. Woo-wee, that's a lot of people, and we thank you all for being here tonight and enjoying the show. We're always entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many people do consider the channel to be their primary source of news, and we hope that once again, like every other night, we have been able to meet the expectations expectations of professionalism, knowledge, information, and news coverage that we generally try and provide every single night. With that in mind, it's time for us to move on to a segment that doesn't require any of those things, which is the question segment, which is the funnest segment of the night, because basically we all get to ask really interesting questions, go into really deep and wildly interesting rabbit holes, and basically goof off if we want to and make a whole bunch of jokes and hopefully get some laughs. Now, laughs are not guaranteed. Some of the jokes are garbage. We already know that, so telling us that is not a shock. Some of them do flop. But we will be making sure to get into the flops, if they happen, nonetheless, as quickly as possible now, with a great deal of expediency and a great deal of grace. So with that in mind, Matthew, what do we got?
And some of the jokes do flop, but tell me this, though. Tell me this. Out of the occasional flopper, we occasionally have a codfish that comes in here and flops around on the deck because the joke doesn't land. But where else are you seeing this news, by the way? Like, you're not seeing this news anywhere. These multi-million-dollar companies can't even give you the news that we're giving you as two 25-year-olds, or almost 25-year-olds, running the channel. It's crazy these days. Well, it's the new way to get the news. I'll tell you what, on the YouTubes and the Walmarts and the Costco's, all those things right there, of course, for like George Bush. But anyways, jumping right into our super chat questions here. Our first one goes to none other than Richard McGurl, who puts in a $50 support. He said, "Keep up the good work, and this is the only news that I watch."
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Richard. And thank you for saying that this is the only news you watch. We're always honored to hear that folks use this as basically their only news source these days. Back in the day, we always used to say that everyone ought to have a secondary news source to work off of along with ours. Nowadays, a lot of people just go out of their way to basically choose us as their only source of news, which we're always greatly honored and greatly appreciative of. And I got to thank you, massively, for being one of those people. And that is why we put so much effort and so much hard work into this, is because we know that folks like you, Richard, actually count on this channel as your only source of news. And so we always want to make sure that it's as high quality, well-informed, and realistic as it can be to the situations that we're seeing around the world. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to none other than James Hughes, and he puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, James, for that support as well. He said, "Can you please go over the site where the Iranians have covered with dirt? And could this be for possible radiation leakage?"
It's highly unlikely there'd be a radiation leakage because from what we know, this facility didn't have any radioactive or nuclear components within it at the time of the strike. This is more importantly a research facility from what we know, meaning that while Natanz and Qom are actually involved in uranium enrichment, this facility is more so research-based, meaning that it's not really dealing with actual radiological elements. So for that reason, we believe that the tunnels are being pretty much covered up and buried so that way people can't get in because something sensitive is within it. Either critical information, critical knowledge, critical information, critical developments about their testing, or maybe even in this case, like we're hearing from the IAEA director, enriched uranium that they've moved from other sites and have put here due to the safety that it'll provide. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what I would know at the moment. And I also thank you for the support and help of this channel to keep on running. Folks like you make this thing possible, and we're always wildly appreciative and greatly thankful to folks like you. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $50 support from none other than Robbie Fordis. And thank you very much, Robbie, for that $50 support. And we do appreciate that very, very much. He said, "For Costco chicken and try the chicken salad. It's delicious. And what other countries are in the region to help protect U.S. forces other than Israel?"
And that is a great and amazing question. And I also got to say, Costco chicken salad is goated. It's not, like, in my opinion, it isn't as good as the rotisserie chicken on its own, but it is very good. Recommend, if you have a Costco membership, that you give it a try. Now, to answer your question, there are actually a lot of countries in the Middle East that protect U.S. forces. That would include Qatar, Bahrain, kind of the UAE, but not really, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Kuwait. Those are basically all the other ones except for Israel. A lot of people kind of have like this misunderstanding, and I honestly got to say that this misunderstanding is due to a great deal of like ignorance that's portrayed by a lot of talking heads out there that say that Israel is our greatest ally, and then they basically go on to make it out to be that every Islamic country in the Middle East absolutely hates us and is trying to kill us every day, when the reality of that is that a lot of these countries are actually allies of ours. Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait are all very significant U.S. allies, and generally Oman is as well, but not really to the degree that these other nations that I'm talking about are. Iraq is kind of neutral to the United States. They don't hate us, but their government doesn't really lean into loving us either. That's because of a whole bunch of internal political stuff that they deal with. And then the UAE basically is like a wild card. They basically work with anyone whenever, and are kind of like Turkey in a way, where Turkey does Turkey things, the Emirates does Emirates things for the larger part. So I hope that does address it the best I can, because we did see that Qatar did fire off its own air defense in defense of the skeleton crew of U.S. forces that we had at Al Adid the last time. We also saw that Jordan fired off its air defense missiles in defense of Israel and U.S. forces last time, and we also saw that the Saudis did conduct some air defense action as well in support of the United States. Kuwait is more low-key, but Kuwait also allows for us to base whatever forces we want in their country, because Kuwait, as far as their foreign policy is concerned, basically owes us an eternal debt for liberating their country in the Gulf War in 1991 from the Iraqi occupation that had happened under Saddam Hussein. So I hope that does address it the best I can, and a huge thanks to you for the support, and I hope that does address that incredibly well. And I also highly encourage, this is something I greatly encourage folks to do, is read about the Middle East's modern history. And when I mean modern history, I mean from the collapse of the Ottoman Empire in 1918 till the present day. Most important part of Middle Eastern history to know to understand what's going on there today. Like all this crap, like some people, like, here's the funny thing to me, like, not rabbit holing a little bit too much on this, but in America, basically people only know the Middle East, or really kind of like only understand the Middle East through the Crusades, because that's basically the only time in most U.S. history classes that the Middle East comes up, which I find crazy, because it's like, this is really the most important region of the world resource-wise for us to control for oil purposes, and yet they never teach you in school in the United States about modern Middle Eastern history. But everybody knows it about the Crusades, so basically everybody in America looks at it as the Christians versus Islam, which isn't the case in the modern day. It's basically the United States, which doesn't have an official religion, teaming up with the Jews in Israel and all of the Islamic nations and the other nations that we're allied with to be able to conduct actions against the Islamic Republic of Iran and their proxy forces. And that's basically the rundown. But it's a very interesting and nuanced history, actually. I highly encourage people read about it, because once you read about it, it is very deep, intricate, and just wildly interesting. I mean, it truly is. I can't really hype that up enough. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $50 support from ER2 The Win. And thank you very much, ER2 The Win, for that 50 as well. We do appreciate that. He said, from your neighbor across the valley, and get you some Moochie's cheesesteaks, LSA.
Hold up. OBS has disconnected there for a moment.
Oh.
And it's reconnected. Hey!
Oh!
Hey!
Did you hear what I say? Did Discord disconnect too?
No, Discord was fine. It was just OBS. OBS had like a little issue there. But so, can we reread that again for all the folks out there in the audience?
So reading that for all the folks out there in the back, this one once again goes to ER2 The Win. He puts in a 50. He said, from your neighbor across the valley, get you some Moochie's cheesesteaks, LSA. Vince, Vance, and Valiant's on repeat in my head.
Hey, and thank you so much for support. From a neighbor in the valley, you must be in the Salt Lake City Valley area, which encompasses Salt Lake City, which is or as I like to call it, Salt Lake City. It's a really great place. I love Salt Lake City, and I thank you for the incredible support, and I thank you for sponsoring us to have a cheesesteak. I have had one cheesesteak, and I think it was from a place called Pardon My Cheesesteak. It was okay, but I have been looking for a good cheesesteak, and hopefully that will be the one. And I also have to say, to all of the Utahns who are watching right now, I don't mean to sound like an immigrant from like a foreign country that had it really bad and then moved to America. It's like, oh, America's so great. But y'all ought to be really happy that y'all live in Utah. Utah is a amazing place filled with all kinds of cool stuff. The infrastructure is really well kept up, especially compared to Alabama. It is a really cool place. We've been loving it here. I know that Matthew can definitely agree with that. We have loved our time in Salt Lake City.
I love my time in Salt Lake City. It's so nice out here. It's the salty lake. That's what they say. They call it the salty lake. They say, sir, it's such a good place. It's a salty lake. It's drying up, sir, but we're going to put a hose in it and fill it up like a pool. We're going to put some of that cleaner material in it, too, and make it clean. Also, by the way, I will say this. It's a very beautiful lake, but it does have a smell to it. I will say that. When you get close to it, it has like a sulfur smell, which is a little bit overwhelming if you're not used to it. So you have to get really close to it, though. Like, you have to be basically like on the interstate, like that close. Like you can see there on the map how close the interstate is to the Salt Lake. You had to be pretty close to it, but it is pretty cool though when you see it from a distance to see basically like a huge sea out there in the middle of mountains.
You know why the lake smells like that, Matthew?
Because all the dead brine fish.
Because of the brine shrimp. Look, it's a little brine shrimp. Look at it. How cute. These things die in droves in the Salt Lake. And that's actually what creates the salt. It's actually dead brine shrimp, from what I know. I might be mistaken on that, but that's what I heard. So I'm going with that for now until someone tells me I'm wrong. So if you're telling me I'm wrong and you can tell me how I'm wrong, I will change that immediately. But that's what I've heard makes the lake salty. But there's loads of these in there, and they settle at the bottom of the lake when they die. And whenever a strong wind comes through, it basically just kind of like churns up the lake a little bit, and it kind of like unsettles all of the dead brine shrimp at the bottom to the top, and that's what creates the smell. But it's a really nice lake. Like when you see it from a distance, it literally looks like the Gulf of Mexico. It's beautiful, really. It's really cool. And I've only seen it once, actually. Funnily enough, we live in Salt Lake City. I've only seen the lake once. I've seen Utah Lake a million times. But Salt Lake itself is actually kind of hard to see unless you get almost like right up on it, or if you're over towards Tooele. But beyond that, I do thank you incredibly for the support, and I do have to say that Utah is an absolutely amazing and incredible place. It's a place that is a magical place filled with magical charms. The people are so nice. The stores are great. You got plenty of stuff to do, indoors and outdoors. It's truly a paradise. You know, it's the promised land. Am I becoming... Would you like to hear about our Lord? But anyway, I'm just kidding. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on to the next. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running.
Also, by the way, Robbie had a follow-up to his super chat question real quick. He put in a clarification. Excuse me. He said he meant to say, are there other NATO forces in the region to help U.S. with attacks or protection?
Oh.
And generally speaking, there are. I believe the British, are there. Believe it or not, the British are still like fighting with the United States diplomatically over Diego Garcia and also another RAF base that's in dispute right now. But I think they might be in the region, perhaps. I think also isn't France there as well, unless I'm mistaken?
France has a frigate in the Red Sea right now, but I think that's more of like an anti-Houthi thing. So if they start attacking shipping, the French can kind of protect their own interests, and the British are there to protect their diplomatic interests that they have with Qatar, Jordan, and the UAE.
Interesting. So apparently it's not as many as I thought. I have a feeling that mainly NATO is going to stay out of this for the most part, except for maybe like a couple of outliers that maybe want to assist with the offensive attacks. They'll probably stay out unless Iran makes a mistake of shooting a missile into a NATO country in Europe. They'll probably try to stay out for the most part, but they'll be involved in one way or another.
Yeah, I would have to say they're probably going to be involved in one way or another, probably in air defense over Jordan, Qatar, and the UAE, because they have diplomatic connections to those countries. But they're not going to be involved in bombing Iran alongside the United States. They're there largely for defensive purposes, for their own strategic and diplomatic interests inside of the region. So really, in terms of NATO forces, there isn't anyone that's going to be there, you know, basically putting themselves in the line of fire for America, like the French and the British aren't doing that. But really, there's a lot of other countries in the Middle East that we can count on for that defense. And I thought that was what you were asking. Sorry about that. And I hope that does answer the question now with that revision in mind. And I also saw someone say, let's see here. I'm trying to see. Someone said something in the chat. It was very interesting. Let's see. Gulf of America. No, I call it Gulf of Mexico. Sorry. I grew up with it. It stays. But I can't find what I'm actually looking for. That's unfortunate. That's so sad because it's always a great question. I always see it, I'm like, oh, I need to circle back to that. And then I can never find it when I go back to look for it again. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Fred Riemann, who put in a 50. And thank you very much, Fred, for that $50 support. And we appreciate that very much. It's very generous of you. He said, LSA and great job tonight.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for enjoying our work tonight. We try our best, we truly do. And I got to thank you incredibly so much once again for enjoying it and supporting it, because folks like you are helping this channel to make this thing possible day after day and keep covering this news like we do religiously. And so humongous thanks to you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, it is time for us to move on and into the next one. I see a lot of people saying it's the Gulf of America. I'm just gonna tell you up front. I don't play the name games. Like if I was born and I learned it as something, it stays that way. I'm not into this political shit with the naming stuff. And if you find that you're gonna be at odds with me personally over that, this might not be the show for you. If I grew up calling it the Gulf of Mexico and I ended up growing up and calling what some people call Mount Denali, Mount McKinley, I don't care who the hell changes it to Denali. It's still Mount McKinley to me, because that's what I learned when I was a kid, and the Gulf of Mexico is still the Gulf of Mexico. I don't play the stupid political games when it comes to naming stuff, because it's absolutely ridiculous. We're renaming something that's been that way for as long as most people have been alive, and we're just going to rename it for some stupid arbitrary reason. It makes no sense. So I don't play that game. So if you don't like that, sorry, but I'm not changing that. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
Man, feisty. I'll tell you what. Now, feisty, that Gulf of America thing got him set off.
It's so stupid. I mean, it's so stupid. I mean,
Oh.
it's like all the people back in the day who said, "Oh, it's not Fort Benning anymore; it's Fort Moore," because a Democrat renamed it. It's like, I don't give a shit who's renaming it, a Republican or a Democrat. If it was Fort Benning, it's Fort Benning. If it's the Gulf of Mexico, it's the Gulf of Mexico. It is what it is. I don't give a damn if you like the guy who renamed it. I don't care. I'm still calling it what it was called when I was growing up. That's how it is. Like I don't mean to be feisty on that, but I just find the politicism of this stupid naming convention that so many politicians do these days from every side to be ridiculous. And I just find it even more ridiculous that people try and enforce it on other people. It's just so goofy.
Yeah,
But
enforcers, those damn enforcers. You got to look out for them trying
Yeah.
to enforce that. But also, by the way, we do have another super chat here, and this one is going to go to none other than guess who. We're not going to play a guessing game. This one goes to Timmy, who puts in a 31. And thank you very much, Timmy, for that support.
OBS is having some issues. OBS just disconnected again for a brief second or two there. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Good thing we're going to have a hopeful fix to that here soon. But can you reread that one again?
Should I start cussing now or start cussing later?
Later.
Jumping into this one again, thanks to whatever that little glitch was there with OBS or whatever. Timmy put in a 31, and thank you very much, Timmy, for that support once again. He said the best news channel that I watch.
And thank you so much for the support, and we are proud to be the best news channel you watch. Your words, not ours. And so humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it rolling. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 30 from Dan Brooks, and thank you very much, Dan, as well, for that $30 support. He said, I will never question your intel sources again.
And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. And I thank you so much for enjoying our intelligence sources that we have here on the channel, because we try our best to source them and then report on them every day. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Duncan VR, all the way down from Australia, by the way. And thank you very much, Duncan, for the $26 Australian support. He said, Bamu wolf quag, I'm meow until I'm at. What is Zelensky saying, though? Oh, man, I get no respect around here. Snort, oink, oink, and moo.
Thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR, and helping this channel to keep it running. And we always appreciate those. Those are always an interesting thing. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Robert Krogan, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Mr. Krogan, as well, for that support. He said, evening enforcers and LSA and dine on me.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. And we thank you for the food fun. We like to eat. It's good to eat. And I had some delicious, and last time I was telling folks, I don't really eat fried chicken a lot because we had it so much. I actually had fried chicken tonight. It was pretty good. It was like spicy chicken, but it was good chicken. I like my food spicy. So big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from my trucking travels. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support once again. And also, I saw that we missed your live chat the other night. We're going to make up for that tonight. And thank you very much for that support once again. And he said, good evening, my friends. And he said, I hope everybody's having a wonderful night. And thanks for keeping me awake again, cross country. Take one from the chat and LSA forever.
Hey, and thank you so much, My Trucking Travels, for the support. And I hope that you're out there on the road once again, safe and sound, and making sure to keep America's economy running. And we are always happy to keep you company on these long nights. And we will make sure to get one from the chat in your honor. And due to us seeing your comment last night on the stream, we're very sorry that apparently we did miss that. And so we will actually be getting 2 live chats in your honor tonight. Very sorry about that. We apparently did miss that. So we will be making sure to get that tonight. And so, Matthew, what do we got for our first live chat?
So the first live chat goes to Caden Fox, who said, if Afghanistan invades Pakistan, will the U.S. help?
No. No, I don't think we will, actually. I think we're going to just kind of support the Pakistanis in spirit and then stay out of it completely beyond that. So I hope that does address that live chat the best we can. And we are on to the second live chat in honor of My Trucking Travels.
And this one goes to James Hughes. And he said, will Iran attack Israel and U.S. naval vessels first?
They probably wouldn't, because it would actually be the toughest to attack those vessels. They have the best air defense out of everyone available. They have their carrier air wings, and they also have their ship-based air defense forces. So it would be the hardest to attack them. They'll probably try and go for ground targets throughout the Middle East instead. That actually, crazily enough, might be easier for them to try and take on. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, big thanks to My Trucking Travels once again for that incredible support. And we are on to the next one.
And we also have a support from none other than Aurora. Goodness gracious. I get a little choked up over here, but Aurora put in a 20, and thank you very much, Aurora, for that support while I choke. And he said 95% lemon pepper enriched Costco chicken fun.
And thank you so much for the support for the enriched Costco chicken. Matthew, we got that yellow cake chicken up in here.
I feel like I sucked down some lemon pepper seasoning just then. That was the worst feeling. It really burned my throat there for a second. I was like, what the hell? I don't even know what just happened. It's like I sucked down a bug or something.
Don't you have don't you have the humidifier now?
Yeah, I do, but it's like something was scratching my throat just then. I was like, geez, man, I don't know what that was. Or like a fly, a bug, or something. Dirt.
That's interesting. I wonder what's up with that. I want a mystery, but I do thank you massively for the support nonetheless, and we will actually absolutely dig into that yellow cake chicken. I bet it's delicious. And so a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 20 from Stonegate. And thank you very much, Stonegate, for that 20. We do appreciate that very much. They did not leave a comment, but we do appreciate that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And of course, it is folks like you who help this channel to keep on running and help it to keep on rolling. And so, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And I also see some people talking about the whole Fort Benning thing. Some people are like, Fort Benning stays Fort Benning. You're naming it after a traitor. Here's my thing. Fort Benning was named Fort Benning, if I'm not mistaken, and during the Reconstruction era in the United States after the Civil War. If it was that egregious to name it that, why the hell didn't they rename it in the middle of Reconstruction when the Department of War was the one literally governing the South, and they didn't even have any autonomy at that point? Why was it named that? If it was named that back then, and that wasn't an issue then, why is it an issue now? And also, it's been around at that point for 150 years. Why? What the hell is going on here, Matthew? What is going on? It's down again.
This is definitely something on your end, man. I'll tell you, I don't think it's OBS. I think it's your connection. But luckily, we might have that stitched right up here soon.
We should. I don't know what's going on with that. That's wild. It's doing that every 10 minutes now. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, someone said, Enforcer, Matt, you're talking BS about Israel. You young guys have lost your minds. Israel has the balls to confront the bullies, and the U.S. is still playing around. Well, I'm supporting Israel going after Iran. I'm not sure what you were speaking about. I have been supporting Israel dealing with the Iranian threat. I've been supporting the U.S. dealing with the Iranian threat. I've been the one saying that. In fact, there's people out there that believe we should not go to war with Iran, and I would disagree with them. So I'm not sure what you're referring to there. I think you ought to listen closely. Also, by the way, hold on a second. Let me see what this guy's profile picture is. This might tell us a lot. Oh, he's got a picture of Malai. That's his profile picture. I think that tells me what I need to know. Thank you very much, good sir. But moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Ann Wyckoff, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Ann, for that support. And they said, how do we know that Iran doesn't already have a nuclear weapon? And another channel reported several earthquakes around sensitive nuclear sites a short while back.
And I would have to say, could you reread that again really quickly?
Oh, yeah. Is it breaking up again?
No. It was just that I was trying to focus on seeing why it was breaking up, and then I missed the first part of the question.
Oh, yeah. Ann said, how do we know that Iran doesn't already have a nuclear weapon? And another channel reported several earthquakes around sensitive nuclear sites a short while back.
Earthquakes around nuclear sites that are 3 miles underground are nowhere close to suggesting, and I got to say that some people get more so into the propaganda of something than actually speaking about it honestly. If an earthquake happens and it's a 5.0, which would kind of suggest a nuclear test, but it happens 3 miles underground, a nuclear test did not happen. Nuclear tests are conducted underground, at least very close to the surface, meaning that whoever put that out is generally trying to fearmonger, to try and catapult people into action on Iran when we don't even need them to be testing a nuclear weapon for folks to be catapulted into action in reality. There is, like, for the Iranians to have a nuclear weapon, they would have to conduct a successful nuclear test. Once they conduct a successful nuclear test, they are going to announce that immediately, because instead of Iran wanting a fight, Iran doesn't want a fight because they know they're going to lose, and a lot of their top government officials know that they're going to be 6 feet underground before long if the U.S. starts bombing them. So what they would want to do is become a porcupine where nobody can touch them, and they go hands off or you're going to get hurt. And the best way to do that is by announcing we now have a usable nuclear weapon. So if they have a nuclear weapon, they would tell us they had a nuclear weapon, because North Korea didn't hide that at all. Once they conducted their nuclear test, literally within the next few hours, they announced that they had successfully tested a nuclear weapon, and they were a nuclear-armed state. And that's how every country does it in the world, because once you announce that you're nuclear-armed, basically nobody can touch you without severe reprisals happening afterwards. So it would basically stop the U.S. from doing anything to them if they had a nuclear weapon. So instead of hiding that info and then getting bombed and trying to use it, they would announce it, because a nuclear weapon is far better as a deterrent than an actual usable weapon. So with that, I hope that does address that well. But as far as whoever's source was saying that, it sounds to me like they're getting a little bit more into the propaganda side of things, trying to fearmonger to get people to think that we need to act because of that, instead of us talking more about it reasonably like we are right now and saying we need to act so that way it doesn't get to that point to where we can't do anything about them. Otherwise, they're going to threaten to nuke someone out there, and then basically our hands are tied. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, moving into our next one. This one goes to GunFox621, who puts in 3 super chats, each $20 supports. And thank you very much, GunFox, for that support. And he has the days in history. He said on on February the 7th of 1981, a Tupolev Tu-104A passenger jet crashed during the takeoff from Pushkin Airport near Leningrad, Soviet Union. The official investigation concluded the aircraft was improperly loaded. Question from the chat.
And let's take a look at this crash. Here's a Tu-1.
Oh, a dinosaur. Look at that ugly thing.
Let's see here. It was on the 7th of February of 1981, 20 meters southwest of the runway at Pushkin Airport. So they literally made it 60 feet and then they crashed. It appears that everyone on board died as a result, so that's unfortunate to see. But the Soviet Union has an endless list of air disasters that are created from general incompetence. I mean, everyone has air disasters that happen, but generally the Soviet Union's incompetence is always just so egregious. Like they'll know about something that's wrong. Like here in America, it'll be something like, say like the McDonnell Douglas DC-10 has a swing out door instead of a swing in plug door. So, for that reason, because they didn't consider that or even think about that, when the cabin becomes pressurized, it's under great strain and it blows out and it creates an explosive decompression, leading to the loss of the aircraft. It's something like people just didn't even notice it and never even thought that that would be an issue, and therefore an incident happens. Basically, every Soviet air accident is when they were designing the plane, they figured out that if you pull this lever, the whole plane explodes. And then the Soviet Union covered it up because they didn't want to go and spend more money redesigning it. And then they also never told anyone about that flaw. So everyone just started pulling that lever and getting everyone killed. So it's really interesting to see this one because it looks like, let's see here. Crew evidence was uncovered. Some military officers did not comply with seating assignments, and that these officers pressured the crew to make the flight in an unsafely unloaded aircraft. See, that's the kind of incompetence that gets people killed in the Soviet Union, is officers being like, we'll sit whatever the hell we want. And also, how unstable is a plane that literally just changing the seating arrangement in the cabin is going to get people killed? Like, how bad?
Must have been must have had a lot of diversity when it comes to like the weights of these people. Like there must have been like some really large folks and some really skinny folks, and they put all the big ones in the back and the skinny ones in the front or something like that.
Bruh. And then it said, let's see, another factor reported by witnesses was that large rolls of printing paper were loaded on board, and these are believed to have rolled rearward during acceleration on takeoff, causing the center of gravity to shift aft of acceptable limits, thereby reducing the stability of the aircraft and pitch, basically making it pitch up into a stall, and it was an unrecoverable stall at that point. So that's wildly interesting. But you know what's even funnier, folks, is that the MiG-15, and this is one that I find so funny, the MiG-15 here, there was actually one that we captured because the North Korean pilot defected in the Korean War and gave over his aircraft. He didn't even know that he was giving it over with a cash prize and a house in America and everything, but he got all of it. And then when we test flew this thing, this is the funniest thing, Matthew. There is a fuel pump on the MiG-15 that feeds the fuel to the compressors in the engine. And if you end up rigging that the wrong way, when you're like prepping it for flight, instead of it just failing, it actually creates a violent explosion that literally rips the aircraft apart. And we had to be told that by the North Korean pilot. We didn't even test it because he was like, yeah, they told us that if you do this thing this way to activate the pump, it actually just explodes. It blows away the aircraft and it catches all the fuel on fire as well. So basically you're in a giant fireball at that point on the ground. So then we're like, oh, okay. And we never tried it because, it would lead to a test pilot getting killed. But apparently this thing had like some sort of a critical failing with the fuel pump. And they just had to tell everyone, oh yeah, don't pull the lever this way, pull it this way in the cabin, because otherwise the whole thing will blow up. So, I mean, it's like, that is absolutely stupid.
Yeah, that sounds stupid to me. It sounds like some really horrific engineering.
Yeah, and every single Soviet plane is like this, like the Tu-144, which is the Soviet Concorde. The funny thing about this one, just to give you all another little tiny tidbit story about this, the Tu-144 violently shook in flight to the point that people couldn't hear each other over the violent shaking just from that alone. And also they said the shaking was so bad, nobody could even get up to go to the restroom in this plane. So you would literally have to stay buckled in, basically just getting shook to death for like 3 hours on the one only flight path that this thing flew, which was, I think, was from Moscow to some middle of nowhere city that doesn't really even count, even in the Soviet Union. It was like a very small city, and they would just fly it there so that way they didn't have to completely scrap the aircraft. So, kind of a little funny with that as well. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one that Gunfox sent in.
And the second one from Gunfox is another 20. He said the Kishtim disaster in Russian, which I cannot pronounce. I don't know how to read Cyrillic like that. He said sometimes referred to as the Mayak disaster or the Ozyorsk disaster in newer sources, was a radioactive contamination accident that occurred on the 29th of September, 1957 at Mayak.
Let's see. And that is the Kishtimskaya Abari, which is what that says in Russian. So that is the Kishtim disaster. Another fun one of the Soviet Union. So back when the Soviets were starting off their nuclear program, to give you all a little bit of a background behind this one, interesting history here. Back then, they generally were conducting their program just outside of Chelyabinsk to the northwest, just on the other side of the Urals. And they decided that it was a good idea that whatever sort of radioactive leftovers that they had that they weren't really using in programs or testing, they would just drive around the surrounding lakes and they would just dump it into the lake. No joke, like no care at all, dump it straight into the lake. So they started dumping so much of the stuff that it started to just straight up irradiate the water in the lakes. And I think there was some sort of an incident that happened that then led to this radiation spreading. They had to evacuate everyone out of the area. They had to completely cordon it off. I believe it's still kind of cordoned off to this day, but it was basically the precursor to the Chernobyl disaster and the liquidation process that they had to conduct. So really similar to Chernobyl in that regard, but once again already showing that in the late 50s the Soviets were woefully incompetent when it came to nuclear technology, nuclear research, and also radiological elements, because they had no idea of how to safely dispose of the stuff. Even knowing that it was radioactive, they still dumped it in the surrounding lakes. But still, a humongous thanks to you for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. And also, here's the effects. 270,000 people were affected, 10 to 12,000 were evacuated, and about 200 people died of radiation sickness, directly as a result from the radiation in the lakes. 66 diagnosed cases of chronic radiation syndrome were also seen as well around the area. Really crazy sort of a thing. And then from then on, the Soviet Union decided, you know, we have a good enough understanding of nuclear power that we're now going to create these shitty RBMK reactors, and the control rods made of boron we're going to tip with graphite, which is an accelerant. So that way if you push the emergency shutdown button, it doesn't shut the reactor down. It actually sends it into basically a cataclysmic chain reaction that leads it to automatically explode. Smart. And then they didn't tell anyone about that, by the way. That's why, like, you can watch the HBO miniseries. It actually kind of describes that well. I've watched a load of documentaries about it on YouTube from people who are nuclear scientists, and quite literally, they just never told anybody that the tips of the boron rods are graphite tipped. And that is, the graphite rods in a nuclear reactor of that type, a graphite reactor, are the accelerant to increase the reaction or the splitting of the uranium atoms inside of the reactor. So that's what led to the explosion, was them pushing the rods in that they didn't even know were actually going to accelerate the reaction initially beyond the point of no return. Soviet Union was a scary place, honestly. There was no such thing as safety in the Soviet Union. But anyways, a huge thanks to you for the support once again, Gunfox, and sharing another interesting historical event. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And Gunfox's third super chat says the K-431 submarine accident in 1985 occurred during reactor refueling at Chazma Bay near Vladivostok, and a prompt criticality event caused the reactor to explode, scattering radioactive debris.
That I actually haven't heard of that one. Let me pull that one up. Do we have pictures of that? Let me go pull this up. Oh, they don't have any pictures of it in very Soviet fashion. But it appears that the fate of the vessel was that it was scrapped. Let's see. Huh. There were 10 fatalities and 49 other people suffered radiation injuries. Time magazine has identified the accident as one of the world's worst nuclear disasters. You know, there's something about the Soviet Union and nuclear technology that doesn't mix. What is it, folks? Is it the complete lack of safety, the incompetence, the stupidity? Is it all of them? It's all of them. But I never even heard of this one, actually, to be entirely honest with you, Gunfox, and this is wildly interesting. I'll have to take a read on this one off air, because this is actually piquing my interest, and it was an Echo-class submarine. A garbage scow, basically. It looks like crap. But it looks like it had cells for anti-ship missiles on it. It does have those. That's interesting. Look at that.
That is fascinating. Look at that. That's unusual.
That is kind of unusual. That's actually really unique. I've seen these before, but I've never really looked at them a lot. And that's crazy. It can actually fire anti-ship missiles. That's actually nuts. But apparently it has to, I guess, surface to do that, which makes it a sitting duck. But anyways, a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Panda, who puts in a 20. He said, what do you two think the chance of the buildup in the Middle East actually being to help Pakistan against the Taliban? And doubtful from me, but I wouldn't be surprised.
wildly low because Pakistan is taking the Taliban single-handedly, and we really don't have a lot of a stake left in Afghanistan any longer. And returning to Bagram would be silly because we'd basically have to occupy the whole country again to make that doable for air defense purposes. And then at that point, we're basically completely defeating the benefit of having Bagram. So I hope that does address it the best I can. And a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, we missed the live chat question on our Gunfox. So to return back to that and grab it, this one goes to Atomic Tsunami. He said, could the doomsday order that Israel keeps talking about that Iran is going to do be a justification for Israel to use a nuclear weapon on Iran?
Kind of, but the thing is that Israel using a nuclear weapon would see that they're officially a nuclear-armed state, which would be in violation of the non-nuclear proliferation treaties, which would generally see that the entirety of Europe would then blacklist Israel for any sort of cooperation economically or militarily, and probably a lot of other countries would follow suit, like Russia, who generally Israel's trying to line themselves up with these days, and China as well, considering that they generally back Iran in the Middle East instead of Israel. So it wouldn't be a smart idea on the Israelis' part because they basically see that they're completely cut off from the entirety of the world, possibly even the United States. And while I can tell you that the current administration wouldn't do that because, reasons, another administration in the future would certainly start to consider that and would probably axe Israel as well at that point, meaning that they would end up a lot like a hermit state like North Korea. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 20 from Chris Feilbach. And thank you very much, Chris, as well, for that 20. He said, I have Domino's.
You have Domino's? Like the Domino's is in the game or the pizza? I mean, Domino's pizza is pretty okay. I'm more of a Papa John's guy myself. I like Papa John's. Or there's a lot of other local pizza places around here which are also really good as well. And so a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running and make this thing possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to none other than Yas Mavanda, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much for that support, by the way. And they mentioned some fake news that is on the mainstream media, which it wouldn't be shocking to me. There's a lot of political propaganda pieces they put out on every party. It depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for one party, you go to one channel. If you're looking for the different party, you go to the other channel. If you call that news, I personally don't call that news. I call that political commentary. So that's basically what the mainstream is now, which is kind of lame. But Enforcer, what say you?
I see the comment, and like the thing is that while mainstream news companies are like a cancer, basically, and I think that they need to move on from the political shtick that they do all the time. Criticizing the president is an American right. Like, I don't know why everyone's like, oh, God bless the current president because he's under scrutiny. I mean, like, I don't know if anyone's paying attention. I mean, Fox News was absolutely shredding Biden over his 4 years because he was senile. And that's I think that's just honestly kind of like a hack move for a news company to do that. But the news company has a right to do that. If they don't like someone, they can criticize them. I never saw anyone going, oh, God bless Biden's senile ass getting obliterated by Fox every day. It's like, I don't know why in the world everyone acts like there's supposed to be sympathy. Public officials are supposed to be under a great deal of scrutiny. If I became the president of the United States and there was a whole bunch of news companies out there that just had it out for my ass and were criticizing me every day, I wouldn't like it. But you're also not going to see me make a public comment basically condemning that news company because as the president of the United States, I have transcended that of being a private citizen. I'm now a representative of the U.S. government and the core values and beliefs that it has, meaning that those companies have 100% a right to criticize me within my official capacity as the president of the United States. And they also have the right to basically worship me as well, although I think that would be quite ridiculous, really. But I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion, but I don't really know why everyone's always like, oh, God bless the president and all the public officials, they're under scrutiny. They should be. I mean, that's what the First Amendment allows. It's not like they're special or anything. It's they're a public official at that point. They're always going to be under scrutiny. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Avinator, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much for the support, by the way. They said, I've been watching nightly since Prigozhin moved towards Moscow and keep up the great work. And speaking of the Soviets, have you ever seen the Caspian Sea monster?
And I don't think I've seen the Caspian Sea monster, but I do thank you tremendously for the support and the kind words and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it running. And let's pull up that Caspian Sea monster. What is it? Oh, the Chronoplan. That's what you're talking about, isn't it? Let me go see if I can find the picture of it where it's abandoned on the beach. Here it is. Yeah, there it is. This thing right here.
Oh my god, that's the thing. I thought they were talking about like a Loch Ness monster. So I thought Nessie was about to pull up on the shore. I didn't know they were talking about like a plane.
So this thing, I think this thing was called the Chronoplan, if I'm not mistaken, and it was the idea that this crazy idea that if an aircraft is close enough to the ground, or like a foil is close enough to the ground, like a wing shape, it has this thing called the ground effect. So it's basically able to kind of like fly, but not really fly above the surface of the water in a sense. And so the Russians came up with the idea of this crazy thing which is basically a coastal patrol vessel that looks a lot like a plane. And the idea was that this thing would be able to cover vast amounts of ground fairly efficiently, and it would also be able to fire off 6 at the best anti-ship missiles at any NATO vessels that were getting close to Soviet waters. In reality, this thing was only usable in the Caspian Sea and only on the best of days, because any sort of waves at all would generally rise up far enough that the ground effect wouldn't be enough to see the chronoplan pass over the waves, and so it would end up just getting slammed by the waves heavily, and it would threaten to break up the craft. So they ended up completely scrapping the project, but they were having a plan to create an even bigger one of these things. It's just that they never made it because the project generally died when the designer actually died of a heart attack one day. So with that, I hope that does address that well. Really crazy sort of a little craft there. And I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. You actually jogged my memory about that thing. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $15 support from Timmy. And thank you very much, Timmy, once again for that support. He said the best news channel ever.
And thank you so much for the kind words, Timmy. And we thank you for helping this channel to keep running as well, so that way we can keep staying on air and keep making this what it is. And so a big thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, it's time for us to move on and into the next one. But also, I saw someone say in the chat before we move on to that next one, someone said people believe the lies from mainstream media. All mainstream legacy news is fake. Well, yeah, but I mean, like the thing about that, I definitely agree. I think that people ought to just understand that it's slop. I think that's really what it is. Like, a company never should have government intervention come in and destroy it. Like, I think that would be absolutely unconstitutional and a violation of the freedom of speech for the U.S. government to come in and crush CNN or Fox, depending on their political leaning. I think that people ought to just wise up to it because, generally, having freedoms in America means that gullible people will be taken advantage of to some degree. I think that gullible people ought to just wise up and realize those channels are garbage, and they ought to come and try and listen to real news like we provide every day, where we actually talk about the real things that happen in the world. And there's a lot to talk about, and these mainstream news companies always say, oh, there's not enough happening in the world for us to cover, or our audience is too stupid. It's like they don't even understand what their main purpose is. As the news, it is their job to inform and educate the public. It's not their job to cater to the public's stupidity and ignorance. It is their job to elevate the public's knowledge and information of what's going on in the world around them and let them know what's happening. And they don't take that approach. They take the approach of our audience is stupid, they shouldn't learn, and we'll just cater to their stupidity and ignorance, which is definitely not a healthy sort of a news atmosphere in a republic, because a republic requires, a democracy at least, always requires its citizenry to be well informed on all events going on around the world in as most unbiased a way as possible. So I would say that they aren't really in the business of peddling good news or real news, but they still have a right to exist no matter how bad of a news company they really are. It makes the competition a lot easier for us to deal with, I'll say that. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to John Tango, who puts it at 10. And thank you very much, John, as well, for that support. He said, I hate Mondays. I've been watching since day one and finally learned how to super chat on the phone. And I'm old, but usually watch you guys on my 96-inch TV. And long live the LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and the kind words and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And it's totally fine. The super chat thing proves to be tough for some people, and I completely get that 100%. And so I do thank you incredibly for that support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it rolling every day. So humongous thanks to you so much once again, and thank you for watching for an incredibly long time as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Oli. And thank you very much, Oli, for that support. He said, wouldn't the loggy flights back to Ramstein indicate empty flights leaving the AOR to get more munitions, etc., and then fly back into the AOR? And why rush flying out?
The reason why they're rushing flying out is possibly because they're trying to clear out the airspace for preparatory actions that will be happening soon. Because generally it would indicate that, and we've seen that going on for about a month now. But also, at some point, they're going to have to stop. And once they need to stop, they're going to start telling everyone to clear out of the area as quickly as possible. And that's what we think we were just seeing right there. So that's the reason why we're thinking that they're not going to pick up more equipment. They're flying out of the area to allow an open window for all of the combat aircraft to fill up the airspace and then go conduct their handiwork on Iran. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And a big thanks to you for the support. I double this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Mike Barnes, 2 puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Mike, for that $20 support as well. He said, remove the dot off of Playa del Carmen. It was fake. Canadian living here, ex-Army.
And Playa del Carmen, I don't think we have one there, do we? No, we don't have one on Playa del Carmen. So I don't know where you saw a marker there because we don't have a dot or a marker there on Playa del Carmen. So I thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Mike R82. And thank you very much, Mike, as well. He said, it's go time. And tomorrow's show, we will be at war. And what do y'all think?
It might happen. I mean, one thing we've learned is that the current administration doesn't know really what they're doing or what they want to do. And so it's really hard for us to predict what they want to do because it literally depends on when they wake up. Like, they might sit in their office one day and start playing Phantom of the Opera at full volume where it's hearable outside, or they might just decide to bomb Iran or something. You know, it's like we can't tell, and no one else can tell, because I can tell you why no one else can tell. Basically, every government official these days says, whenever they're asked about, oh, it's up to the president, and that means they don't have a clear answer either, because if they did, they would say something that would indicate they probably have a clearer answer than that. So I hope that does address it the best I can, and a big thanks to you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $10 support from Ghostface. And thank you very much, Ghostface, as well. He said, has there been any airborne units even deployed in the area? Because I haven't seen it.
We haven't heard of any Army ground units being deployed in the Middle East. We did get to see that there were some MC-130J Commando 2s in Azerbaijan, Diego Garcia, and a couple of other locations, which would suggest possibly the presence of smaller special forces units, maybe battalion-level elements that are not too big. But we do not see any brigade-level airborne elements, like, say, the 82nd or the 101st, that are inside the Middle East at the moment, which would suggest that whatever we're doing, we have a very, very limited outcome of ground operations, and if they do happen, they're going to be quite small and fairly quick. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and a big thanks to you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Rye Guy SR. He said, a big night, I see, and take one from the chat, LLTLSA, and Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say, thank you for enjoying our show, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And I saw Paul E. Yeager say, they know exactly what they're doing. They just know the loose lips mantra. That's not true. Loose lips goes around.
You gotta get a live chat, by the way.
Oh, well, we'll get that in a second. Well, actually, we'll get it right now, and I'll circle back to that. So, Matthew, what do we got?
So the live chat question goes to O Hydrogen, who said, will the military of Iran focus on Israel, then the U.S. bases in the Middle East region?
That's what we think they might do. I think they're actually going to try and spread out their attention to the U.S. and Israel on land. I don't really think they'll be able to do anything against the carrier strike groups or the Navy because they're going to be so far off of the shore that the Iranians really won't have anti-ship missiles to reach them. So I think they're going to try and split up their attention a little bit. But generally, if push comes to shove, they're probably going to direct most of their munitions at Israel because they're going to try and screw over Israel if they're getting screwed over in turn. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And before we move on to the next one, big thanks to you once again for the support and help with the channel to keep it rolling. Someone said about the loose lips mantra and all that stuff, and they know what they're doing. Well, that would seem like that would make sense, but it doesn't make sense Because if that was the case, then everyone in history would have done that already over the past 30 years. And that was never the case. There was a humongous talk about the U.S. is going to have to go into Iraq and destroy the weapons of mass destruction under the Bush administration. And that was publicly said that we were going to be going to war with them. That wasn't a secret. That was well known in the public. It was well known in the public when the U.S. was going to invade Afghanistan, because they had been building up the rhetoric for a couple of months after September 11th, saying Osama bin Laden's hiding out in Afghanistan. We've got to go get him because the Taliban's harboring him, and they're not willing to kick him out of the country and extradite him here, so we're going to have to go to Afghanistan. There was no loose lips there, and there was no loose lips by Daddy Bush in 1991 when he said the Iraqis have illegally annexed Kuwait, which is violation of international law. We are going to go to war with them to go and liberate Kuwait from the Iraqi occupation, and so on and so forth. There's whenever there is a clear sign that a war is coming, which we're seeing right now, there's no hiding that. Like the Iranians aren't sitting there and going, there's hundreds of planes here, like a quarter of the Air Force is here, a third of the Navy's here. It looks like the U.S. is about to bomb us, but they didn't say that they're going to war with us, so we have no clue. Like, they're not that oblivious. I mean, literally anybody can tell you right now that we're about to go to war with them. So you're really not loose-lipping anything by saying, if the Iranians don't stop their nuclear program, we're bombing them. And if you said at this point, they haven't shown us the signs that they're willing enough to do that, we're going to have to bomb them now. It's not like they're going to be able to do anything different. I mean, they're literally watching the same force deployments now that they would if you were making those statements. Loose lips pertains to these F-22s are going to take off at this time on this day and go bomb this target inside of Iran. That's where loose lips gets people killed. But saying something like we're going to have to go to war with them and we are going to war with them, that's not loose lips. That's just foreign policy and how it works. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Winston Smith, who puts in a 7. And thank you, Winston, as well. He said, perfect Ramstein pronunciation. And free Iranians from the regime in this weekend, I hope.
And thank you so much for the support. And is it Rammstein or Rammstein?
It's Ramstein, I believe.
I think it is Rammstein. And I think you have to do the Steen thing. Man, did you see that clip I sent you on Instagram last night of that kid? He's like, I'll kiss you for bouncing. Man, I was like, damn. I was like, that was crazy.
What's wrong with that kid?
Man, I don't know, but that kid went like 1940s mode on the spot once his mother started lecturing. I was like, what the hell? Like, if y'all don't know what I'm talking about, it's this German meme, and it's this kid from a documentary. It's a big meme in Germany, and this kid got pushed off of a ledge by his younger brother, and it was just like this family drama thing. And so his mom came up to him and was like, you can't sit there and make fun of him having a toothache. You made him cry. And then the kid, literally sounding like 1930s like mustache man, he's like, what do you mean? And he was like going off to his mom. It was the funniest thing ever.
Jeez.
I mean, you saw
it. Sounds like it.
I mean, you saw the meme. I mean, didn't you? I mean, I sent it to you.
No, I didn't see the meme. I didn't see it.
Bro, you just hearted it. You didn't even look at it. Like, bro, like what the hell, man? It was a funny.
I mean, sometimes I just can't do it. That's a lot. It's flooding me with those memes.
Bro, I sent you like 2 memes a day.
That's a lot of memes for me. I'll tell you what, I'm one of these people. I feel like I'm like about 50 when I see a meme. I look at a meme. I'm like, what the hell is this? I'm like trying to figure them out.
Man, that's so sad, man. I look at all your memes, man. He don't even look at mine. That's sad. That's sad. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Jamali Hamilton, who put in a 5. He said, hello, enforcers. I just heard the news that Ukraine conducted the maiden flight of its new FP-7 ballistic missile. And what kind of force multiplier would this be?
This is definitely going to be a force multiplier for attacks 150 miles into Russia, which means that the attacks at farthest would be at Voronezh and closer to Ukraine than that. So it will definitely be a full force multiplier on strategic attacks on cities like Bryansk, Kursk, Belgorod, Voronezh, Rostov-on-Don, and Krasnodar, as well as Sevastopol. But we're not going to be seeing these used in long-range attacks like the FP-5 Flamingos, which can be used in places like Perm and elsewhere, including Votkinsk, which was the most recent target attacked about 800 miles inside of Russia. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Samuel Smith, who puts in a 5 and does not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Samuel, for that $5 support, and we do appreciate that very much. We also have a 5 from Buckeye History Guy, who said, did the earthquake in Iran last year confirm a nuke, and how much nuclear material would they need for a cobalt bomb, and could proxies carry that device if Iran tried to get them to do it?
The earthquakes in Iran have not proven any sort of nuclear activity. We've observed a lot of them, and a lot of them happen so deep under the surface, there is no way that it's a nuclear test. It's just normal seismic activity. As far as fissile material, they have 60% enriched fissile material, and we believe that they have a limited amount of true weapons-grade fissile material in the country, but they still have not tested a nuclear weapon successfully, meaning that getting anyone to use a nuclear weapon would be unfeasible due to the fact that they do not have an operational nuclear weapon from what we know, but they're getting close to having one. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Blender, who said pizza meter 100% U.S. strike radar.
Can you reread that one again? I'm sorry, for some reason that sounded like a shopping list right there.
He said pizza meter 100% U.S. strike radar.
Oh, like all those words put together. First time, I didn't even know what they meant. I was like, huh? I was like, but a big thanks to you for support. And the pizza meter is going off. It truly is. And a big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Ulf Hednar, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Ulf Hednar, as well. They said, since the enforcer wants to be the president one day president, he said, what would you do to get the U.S. out of debt and curb the spending?
Generally, there is no way for the U.S. to get out of debt. And also, it's a bit of a public misunderstanding that the nation operates like a citizen to where if you're in debt, it's not good. Every nation in the world is in national debt, and a lot of them, at least percentage to GDP per year, are in more debt than we are. A lot of first world developed countries are in debt that's usually 150% to 200% of GDP. Japan is actually has a national debt that is 270% of their GDP, and yet they still generally are looked at as a well-functioning economy by most people. Generally, we would want to curb spending, but that does not mean that we would be looking at a complete deletion of a $40 trillion debt in 4 to 8 years over a term or 2 terms as president of the United States. The best way to be able to try and balance the budget would be to decrease government spending, particularly, I would say, in some departments where the spending could try to be decreased, and that would take a little bit of analysis, because throwing it off the bat, that's generally more of a bias thing. Like if you say something like welfare, it's like people, it's like that might not be the best thing to cut. Might have to cut some other stuff. Generally, I would say that the one thing that I would cut, probably the most obvious one, I would probably cut military spending, because that is, of course, a national security thing, and I do believe in increasing military spending if it appears that major wars are coming up in a couple of years. But by the time I become president, I would hope that that wouldn't be the case, and military spending wouldn't have to be a top priority. And so for that reason, military spending could be scaled back, and maybe a couple of $100 billion, like say $500 billion, could be spent elsewhere on other ventures within the United States of America. But generally, going about it as in we want to completely defeat the debt and get rid of it, is not really realistic, because if that was the case, if that was the ideal, we would see that a whole bunch of countries in the world would not have a national debt, yet every country on the planet has a running national debt, and they've had a running national debt for hundreds of years in some cases, like the United Kingdom. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, at least in my opinion, and a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $20 super chat from Grim Hades. And thank you very much, Grim, for that support. They said, I was about to see my son before he got sent out to Jordan in April, but now they are sending him out next week to Israel, and now I cannot see him.
And I thank you so much for the support, and hopefully he'll stay safe up there. I'm sure he will. The U.S. Armed Forces are always incredibly safe, usually, and hopefully he'll be back soon. So big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it running. And also saw James Hughes say, global debt is a problem, just look back at the 1920s. That kind of is the case, but that was actually a little bit more about over trust in the stock market and basically creating a financial bubble that collapsed, kind of like 2008, which was very much the same thing. Really what led to the 2 largest financial collapses that are within recent history or within living history, which would be the Great Depression and the 2008 financial recession, which both of those were generally global, was because of handing out incredibly high risk debts with basically no collateral. That was usually what happened. Like with the Great Depression, what happened in the United States is that a lot of people would basically go and throw any spare money that they had into the stock market, creating a financial bubble. And then once the stock market started to collapse, basically everybody tried to sell their stocks, which they weren't able to do. So everyone's savings were wiped out almost overnight. And then when everyone tried to make runs on the banks, because people were then trying to withdraw all of their cash to pay off the debts that they had paid off in now worthless stocks, the banks were seeing over withdrawals, and they weren't able to actually cover the withdrawals, which would then mean that the banks would collapse. And if it was just the stock market crash, interesting enough, it would have just been a great recession back then. But because everyone started to make runs on the banks, and about a third of all the financial institutions in America collapsed in 1929, that's what's actually created the Great Depression, was because of the collapse of the financial institutions. And that's also why we now have the FDIC and a whole bunch of stuff like that in the United States. So I mean, kind of in a sense it was, but that was once again more so a complete economic downturn caused by personal debt, not national debt of national countries. But then that kind of was the case though for Britain and Germany, because Britain, Germany, and France all got hit with the Great Depression, because after the U.S. banks collapsed, Herbert Hoover then went and tried to bail out the banks by basically calling up on the U.S. loans that were given in the First World War to Britain and France, which they were then paying to the United States through the reparations from the Weimar Republic in Germany, which then led to the complete financial collapse of Europe as a result of the financial collapse in America. And then that's what created the global depression we saw. But generally, I mean, it was more so personal debt that caused that if you look at the original start. But the national debts in Europe was actually what screwed them over in their debt to the United States. So as long as the financial institutions don't collapse from personal debt, it all should be fine. But the national debt really doesn't affect all too much. And who's going to come collect it anyways? I mean, against the United States of America, the largest armed force in the world, you're not going to see any debt collectors coming up and picking that fight. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next one. This one goes to Grant Harmon, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Grant, for that support. He said, also, by the way, I'm not sure where people were saying explosions in Iran. I haven't seen anything about that, so we'll have to wait and see. But I haven't seen it. But this one goes to Grant Harmon. He said, for all the people that say there's no reasoning to strike Iran, you say what? And I know a few points, but not everything.
There is a lot of points to strike Iran. If we're going from the most recent one, number one, Iran's crimes against humanity and the massacre and genocide of about 30 to 40,000 people inside their country. Two, the development of nuclear weapons in violation of the internationally signed non-nuclear proliferation treaties, which we are a signing member of. We also have the Iranians' intercontinental ballistic missile program, which poses an inherent strategic threat to the United States of America. Fourth, we also have the Islamic Republic of Iran's funding of terrorist forces throughout the region, including al-Nusra, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, which generally all operate against U.S. interests. And then finally, we have Iran designated as a terrorist state and generally conducting terroristic actions and declaring themselves a sworn enemy of the United States of America, and also posing a threat to the shipments of oil on the global markets, which would greatly affect us if they cut off by blockading the Strait of Hormuz. So that would generally be the 6 main points that I could give you as to why military action against Iran would be well and truly justified. And on any one of those, I can make an incredible argument. On 6 of them, we have an argument that's undeniable that we have to act against the Iranians. But a huge thanks to you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Okay, so hold on just a second. Let's see here. What though? So there's explosions being reported in Tehran. It's the middle of the day, and there's explosions happening in the middle of Tehran. Is this the attack? Is this it? And go look at this. I just reposted it from Ocean Technical, which is a very reputable source. There's something going on. Apparently, there's sirens also going off as well in Tehran. I think we might be seeing possibly the start of the attack right now. I'm having a hard time believing that, but it could be, actually.
Oh, well, we do have this picture here, right here, folks, and you better be ready to get some coffee, Matthew. This is happening right now. I think we're going to be live for a minute. We're actually going to have to end the stream here soon and go live with another one, so that way we can make it a completely separate stream. But it does appear that there has been some sort of a rising smoke plume within central Tehran, and it also appears that there's been reported TLAM raids. Those are tomahawks.
I'm not really sure I'm looking at here. I'm not really sure if this is it. This is kind of shocking. I'm trying to get more information.
هم باليستيا على وجهي ولا لا شنو ذا تختيكا
This is a bit early to say this, but I think X might be suppressing these tweets. How many views does this have on it?
This one has 1,000 views. This one has 1,000. Let me repost this one as well. We're keeping an eye on this, folks. We're trying to pay attention to this as much as we possibly can. Let me see here really quickly, Matthew. Let me go to the home page and take a look around really quickly and see if I'm seeing anything. Because we might have just seen the U.S. strikes did start against. Well, we are now seeing the Firefights network is reporting that there are explosions within Tehran, and red alerts have been issued for Israel across the entirety of its national airspace. So it does appear that we might.
So yeah, I'm seeing here. They're saying that Israel's red alert system is reporting sirens going off. I'm seeing that from several different sources. They're saying due to the security situation, ensure location of bomb shelter nearby. It appears that no missile has been fired yet, but they're expecting that it could be some missiles being fired. So I think we might be seeing the start of the attacks, perhaps. I'm not sure if Iran initiated this or if the U.S. initiated. I'm not really sure who did. We did see, by the way, I mentioned this a while ago. People were saying, it won't be tonight. I said that Congo line of these cargo aircraft apparently evacuating the Middle East. I said that we could be seeing strikes in maybe the next couple hours, perhaps. So I wasn't sure. So, I mean, it's possible that they've started. But, I mean, what time is it in Tehran? Let's see. Time in Tehran. It's 10 a.m. in Tehran right now, so it's daylight, very much so daylight right now. So this would be highly unusual. They've launched an attack in the middle of the day.
I'm not seeing any new posts coming out on that, at least for now. But it does appear that we do have some sort of information. Let's take a look at the civilian airspace around the area right now, because that would be shocking if there's a large amount of civilian air traffic in the area. I mean, the air corridor over Iraq is just absolutely busting. And I mean, the airspace over Iran is also highly busy as well. I mean, there's even Emirates flights and such flying through Iran right now. We're gonna keep an eye on this, folks, because right now we're actually kind of trying to figure out what the case is with this. And also,
well, we have something interesting here. It looks like there's a drone, a U.S. Navy drone that appears to be very close to the coast of Iran right now. I can't tell if that's a predictive path or it's actually that close. There appears to be an MQ-4C Triton currently toward the southern part of Iran's coast, like near the Strait of Hormuz. It's sort of lurking around. I think it's jumped off of ADSB information, but it just went dark. It was literally right off the coast. It was very close, more so than usual. So that's kind of interesting. Also, let's see here. Israel's defense minister says Israel has launched a preemptive strike against Iran to remove threats to the state. Is this true? Well, I'm just reposted it. This is coming out from Clash Report right now.
Well,
this is a weird flow of events right here. This is really strange.
Can we get it? Let's see. Let's who's the current Israeli defense minister? We need to go pull this up and see if he actually put out a tweet on that. Let me go see here. Israeli defense minister. That would be Yoav Gallant. So let me go pull up Yoav Gallant. Let's see here. I actually do not see any official tweets on Yoav Gallant's Twitter here. This is the most recent post that he made on his Twitter 15 hours ago. It does not appear that he's made.
Are you sure he's active? I don't think he's active anymore, is he?
Well, I mean, according to this right here, Israeli defense minister stated that Israel launched an attack, and it does say on his Twitter right here, he is the 22nd Minister of Defense of the State of Israel, and I believe that he is still...
I don't think he's dead anymore.
Let's see, Israel Minister of Defense. That would be Israel Katz, so let me go pull him up.
So I'm seeing here that there's media inside of Israel reporting that Israel has launched a preemptive strike on Iran. And it looks like, according to what I can gather, the missiles are being fired into Tehran are apparently Israeli missiles being fired at that city. So that appears to be the situation as of right now. It appears that Israel has been the first one to fire the first shots, and they're currently expecting retaliation. And that's why they've sounded a red alert in their country. So it looks like we're seeing the start of the situation. But the U.S. as far as I can tell, the U.S. is not involved yet in the situation. It looks like they're currently holding off for the moment, from what we can gather. But it looks like we are seeing that Israel has started the war as of right now. So this could be the very beginning of it right now.
It doesn't appear there's been any statements by Israel Katz, Yoav Gallant, or the IDF's official Twitter. So I do not know where they're getting the information that the Israeli defense minister made that statement.
I got videos. I got videos coming out. We're seeing plumes of smoke in the capital, and we're seeing it appears to be in the center of Tehran. There's been massive explosions that appear to be missile explosions. Yeah, it appears to be what that is.
I think, Matthew, we're going to have to end this stream and go live again here to cover this news, because this actually does appear, folks, to actually be the beginning of the third Israel-Iran war at this point. So really quickly, to make sure that we round this thing out, letting some people know this, if your super chat has not been addressed yet, it will be addressed at the end of the next stream that we're about to be running right now. We're probably going to be running incredibly late tonight on the second stream, because we're going to be covering literally the breaking developments of strikes that have just happened on Tehran and have been confirmed to be apparently Israeli attacks by land-based cruise missiles. So we are actually going to have to be breaking our coverage at this moment right now and going live a second time on this situation. So we'll be going off air right now, and we'll be going live once again here in just about maybe 10 minutes after we get a new thumbnail and title put together, and we also start putting this down on the map as today's developments as far as this war is beginning. So, Matthew, do you have any last words to say to the folks before we shut this thing down and go up with a new stream?
Last words. Last words. I don't have any last words, but we'll see you all in the next one. We'll be literally live in just a second. I got to go brew some coffee and try to wake myself up and stuff and try to get going here. It is a time where we're usually calling it a break, but this is just starting, folks. So I'm gathering tons of news right now. I'm getting my phone's lighting up with sources trying to show me stuff. So it's about to be on in just a second. So we are going to get ready for that, and we'll be back in a second.
And thank you all so much for watching this one, and we will see you all in the next one here, as Israel has just officially gone to war with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you all in about 10 minutes.